Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto banished and becomes cold. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content, and do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends, and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A blonde-haired figure could be seen resting on the back of an adult silver-haired man towards what looked like to be the gates of some kind of village. Judging by its imprinted symbol and the one that the duo displayed on their hideouts, this was their village, their home. If someone known to the teenager could see his face right now, they would probably attack him, saying that he was trying to impersonate their friend and doing a really bad job, mainly because his cheerful personality and the all-time grin were missing, replaced by a cold and almost emotionless gaze, as the only thing you could get a read on him was the slight betrayed look. Present time. No Kuni, Uzumaki Naruto, a 14-year-old boy, was currently rethinking or reviewing all his life up until now. He's being carried by his so-called sensei, Hatake Kakashi, after his defeat by his so-called teammate, or best friend who tried to kill him in cold blood, Uchiha Sasuke. Teammate my ass, and what kind of best friend would try to kill the one that until recently considered him a brother in all but blood? But that was not what was plaguing his mind. What he was now acknowledging was the fact that he was weak. Maybe it could be partly his fault, but he knew that he was never given the chance to get the proper teachings. Everyone always tried and succeed on failing and taking everything from him. Knowledge, power, manners, friends. He never had anything of this. This village was the reason for the how he currently is. The blonde didn't know that something in his mind until recently had been erased, though what he noticed was the fact that he could think clearly now. Something inside of him had snapped minutes later after he woke up in the Valley of the End. Flashback. Rage. Rage was building up inside of him after he noticed the fact that he was all alone in the battlefield. Naruto immediately drawed the conclusion. He failed. He failed to stop his brother and bring him back to the village. He failed because he was weak. After all the hard work, after all the hardships in his life and barely surpassing it, he was still useless. Hatred. His mind was working overdrive as he finally reached the main reason that made him this type of person. Brash, childish, weak. A certain fox was watching this, and at first he wanted nothing but to use the opportunity of the fragile mind of his vessel. But as he was about to start his plans, he felt something he hasn't seen in many years, which made him narrow his slitted eyes in curiosity and confusion, so he decided to hold what he was about to do. If someone had looked closer, several black markings on the back of his head and neck started glowing, trying to stop his train of thoughts, and the Uzumaki noticed the fact that something was trying to force him into unconscious, but with an insane roar. He pushed as much chakra he still had outside of his body, trying to get rid of this uncomfortable feeling. Ah! The ground beneath him cracked from the sheer pressure of the density of his chakra, as unknowingly the same black markings started to vanish. The ground shook, and seconds later branches emerged from it, dancing wildly around him before they receded as nothing had happened. A true smile was plastered on his face before everything went black. Mindscape. First confusion, then realization, and finally fear. Kyubi saw the turmoil that his vessel was currently in. After pushing some of his corrosive chakra into his Jinchuriki during the fight, and even then watching the defeat by the hands of an Uchiha no less, the nine-tailed fox shook his head, knowing that he was probably going to die in the future because of this pathetic Nigen. He knew he had to take control of his vessel's body and escape, otherwise he would never see the light of the day again. Noticing the anger and build-up hatred in Naruto, he knew that this was his chance, but something held him back, and after noticing the restrictions placed on his vessel's mind, it only took few seconds to realize the original effects of the seals. Tampering mind seals that actually are connecting his brain to the body. Oh? And I can also read kanjis for cessation on something related to his chakra. It's a miracle that he can actually make use or even somewhat control his chakra. I can see now why he's so immature and can't process anything for a few seconds before he goes ballistic. He got almost an heart attack as he saw the Jinchuriki unleash the remaining of his chakra, breaking the said seals out of sheer willpower, but the thing that made his heart almost stop was what emerged from the ground and the significant increase of density in his chakra as it took a purplish-blue color. That's outside of Mindscape. Half an hour later, a silver-haired man reached the valley accompanied by his summon Niken, both looking over the destroyed battlefield in awe. He noticed the lone unconscious silhouette in the middle of the field and rushed towards him as his face contorted to regret and a shamed look as he got closer to the body. I'm sorry, sensei. Flashback end. The sensei stood in duo finally reached the gates, and the former immediately took in high speeds towards the hospital to get his genin recovered. He didn't notice the somber look of the blonde during the travel, nor the actual minor changes on his body except for the slight gained weight of his student. Time skip. It's been a few days since Uzumaki Naruto got into the hospital. During this time he's been awfully quiet, which was noticed by the few visitors he got during his recovering. Senju Tsunade, Godame Hokage, was one of these few visitors that took notice of this major change of her knucklehead blonde. She didn't know what was happening inside of his mind, and she didn't like it one bit. She also took in account the fact that her perverted teammate hadn't visited Naruto during this whole ordeal, nor her favorite's ninja teammate, Harino Sakura, which had irked her. She couldn't dwell more on it since someone had called for a council meeting, and she immediately knew something was wrong as a bad feeling was lurking in her stomach during her way towards the room. Council meeting. Betrayal, rage, hatred, shame, sadness, regret. This were the few of the many feelings going through her mind as moisture had gathered on the side of her eyes. All the dark emotions were directly towards everyone present in the room except for a few clan heads. Tsunade finally let the threatening tears fall as she heard a bandaged old man on her side speaking the reason for all those emotions. As of now, Uzumaki Naruto is banished from Konoha no Sato and Hai no Kuni as it is written in this scroll stamped by the daimyo collected 2 days ago by Jiraiya-san. He will have until tomorrow by the end of the day to leave the country, or he will be executed on the spot. This was unforgivable. She felt useless as with the daimyo's approval, she couldn't override the order. She didn't know what to think about this whole ordeal. Everything just went downhill. She would never get to see the person she started to see as a son, Smile, her rightful successor, her sole reason for surpassing all the fears and darkness that plagued her mind in the past, her everything. No! I have to do something. I know this bastard one-eyed freak is going to try and do something to him, but what can I do? An idea hit her, and she had to conceal a smirk that threatened to split her face before addressing the council with restrained anger. If there's nothing else, you're dismissed before I kill every one of you. After some grumbling about disrespect and pampered princesses, Tsunade immediately disappeared in a swirl of leaves towards her office to gather some stuff before the imminent talk that would surely break her heart. Time skip. At the hospital, there was a huge spike of killing intent which the whole village felt, and almost made their hearts stop if it hadn't receded in the next second. Naruto was furious. His blood was boiling, and if the destroyed bed from just sheer chakra was any indicator, Tsunade knew that if she didn't stop him, the blonde would make Uchiha's massacre a child's play. With a steeled gaze, she spoke. I'm sorry, Naruto, they went behind my back. I don't know what that asshole perverted idiot is thinking, but I'm going to beat him to the ground. You have until tomorrow, but I want you to take this scroll. It's from your mother. I don't know why your father hasn't left anything to you, not even a letter, but I hope that your mother can tell you the reason. Yes, I knew your parents, but Sarutobi-sensei said that your father's will was to let you only know of your heritage after you hit a certain age. I'm sorry. Naruto immediately stopped his urges to kill everyone at hearing the word mother. A betrayed look passed through his eyes before calming down at hearing her reasons. He snatched the scroll, and after Tsunade telling him that this was a blood-sealed item, he nipped his thumb and placed it on top of the scroll, watching in fascination as the object glowed, revealing a letter. He immediately checked its content as tears were already escaping his eyes as he read the first words. Hello, Sochi. First of all, I'm your mother. My name is Uzumaki Kushina, the heiress to Uzushiogakure no Sato. Secondly, if my fears are correct, and they always are, you probably lived a horrible life up until now. I know this because I was the former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and I know the hardships that comes with it from the stories that I heard from the other villages. I'm really sorry and know that I love you, and even though you probably hate me and your team of a father, I will always love you. Your father was Namikaze Minato, the one that sealed the Kyuubi inside of you. I tried to protest and take the fur ball with me to hell, but Minato team saw this as an opportunity to control the beast and make it Konoha's property. If I had known what type of person he actually is, I would never married him, and I really regret not noticing or ignoring the dark emotions that sometimes I felt within him. Just as of now, I know that Konoha is not a safe place. There's many people with ill intentions, and you can't trust anyone other than your godmother and distant aunt Senju Tsunade, my best friends Uchiha Mikoto and Inuzuka Tsum, and my part-time students, Yuhi Kurinai, Yuzuki Yugao, and Inuzuka Hana. I made a clone to take this scroll to one of them. I just hope it had enough time, or I'm afraid your life will be even more difficult. On the bottom of this scroll there's 3 seals. Your heritage and everything you need to know about the Uzumakis. The first to the left has all my knowledge, including the Uzumakis' history. The one in the middle has many jutsus I gathered ranging from Kenjutsu to Fuinjutsu, and finally the last one has my sword, a relic from the Uzumaki clan that has passed generation to generation of the royal blood, and as it is, you're the only one who can wield it, the sentient sword Kaminoikari. Treat it well. There's so much more I want to tell you, but words will never be enough. I wish I could be with you and give you all the love you deserve. Always remember that I love you and I'm proud of you no matter the path you choose to take. Farewell, Uzumaki Kushina, your mother. Silence. The only thing you could hear were the sounds of tears falling on top of the scroll. So, too, Minato was one of the culprits that made my life a living hell. Konoha is full of greedy and power-hungry scums. Since I woke up in the valley, I'm able to pinpoint the chakra signatures and read the people's emotion. I guess these sensory abilities comes from the Uzumaki clan. And my thinking is a lot more clearer. Maybe it was something to do with Kyuubi? I need to speak with it. I need to get out of this village tonight. I can't give the satisfaction to those trashes, and then I'll make you proud, Kaa-chan. Senju Tsunade saw so many emotions running through his face in a span of few seconds that she couldn't count. There was recognition, betrayal, shame, anger, relief, and finally a look of determination and resolve as you could see a small fire lit in those icy blue eyes that made her smile. She was snapped out of her thoughts as he spoke in a slight weak voice for the first time since she gave him the scroll. Thank you? The busted woman gave him a small smile, though you could still see the regret in those amber eyes of her, so he just gave her a reassuring hug and telling her he knew that nothing of what was happening was her fault. Tsunade gave him a grateful look before finishing everything she came to tell. The sentient placed one final kiss on his forehead, reminiscing the time they met, as she knew what the young man was already planning before going back to her office, as she needed a lot of sake tonight. She never noticed the dark look on Naruto's face, though even if she did, Tsunade would agree completely with him. That Arrow team, I'll never forgive him for using me. And Konoha, better prepare yourselves, as one day I'll show you what you've lost. That's my vow. And I'm starting right now. Hokage's office. As soon as Tsunade arrived in her office, she immediately called her personal ANBU and relayed some orders, as she was absolutely sure about her favorite Genin's plan. Though, no one noticed a pure black-colored rat in the corner of the room, dissolving itself into ink as the ANBU left the room, except for a certain green flak-vested man outside of the window who narrowed his eyes before vanishing in a plume of smoke. Time skip. Been a few hours and it was currently 2 a.m. A blonde-haired was currently hopping tree to tree as his mind was racing through many thoughts about his future. I can't just appear outside of some village and say, hey, I'm a former genin from Konoha and wish to join you. Do you accept? No way. I can't go to Tsunade as they are Konoha's ally. Kirigakure should be in the middle of a civil war if what Haku said was true. Iwagakure is a definite no, as I'm the bastard's son and they would just kill me. I've nothing on Kumogakure, but they are not trustworthy if their mission to kidnap and Hyuga was any indicator what to do. He stopped on some random branch as an idea hit him. He decided to try it before sitting cross-legged where he stood and start his meditation. Again, he took notice on how calm he was after the incident. He was never able to sit still on the same spot more than 5 seconds, and now it was giving him so much peace that he actually wanted to make this little exercise an hobby. Finally, after 3 minutes of taking deep breaths and calming his mind, he felt a push. Mindscape. Naruto opened his mind and stood in front of the one that he wanted to meet. He just hoped that this little gamble was a good idea, as he didn't have much time. He was still on the run. Sighing, he opened his mouth to speak. Kyubi. As soon as he spoke those words, a large slitted red eye opened. Naruto noticed that now he could read the fox's emotions, and was surprised by the last one. Curiosity, intrigued, and apprehension? He shook his head at this newfound abilities of his as the beast spoke a word that actually made him stop in his tracks for a second. Brat. Right. I came here to ask your opinion on what I should do or where should I go. You've got more experience, so it's probably the best course of action, even if somehow I can rationalize much better. Speaking of it, was it you that made my mind? I don't know. Clearer? The giant fox looked over his vessel in interest. The intensity of its gaze didn't even make the little brat flinch, which actually slightly impressed him, as this was a first. He decided to comply and humor him. You should lay low for now in some small country, or in case you find an hideout would be the best, so you could train. When you spiked your chakra a few hours ago, you actually called upon my chakra and I was able to see that you received some kind of scroll of your mother. My point is, if she gave you something worthy of using, you should train or learn whatever it is. Naruto was surprised a little bit by the answer, though he was already planning to do exactly what he said after arriving to some conclusions about the other villages. But what made him surprised was the fact that the furball had truthfully answered without insulting him or making sarcastic comments. Kyubi must have read his thoughts. I'm only doing this to ensure my survival, flesh bag. Don. Thank you, Kyubi. Though you didn't answer my last question, I must ask, why are you slight apprehended? There was a surprised look on Kyubi's face as the other eye snapped open and widened a bit before speaking. Oh? He's able to read emotions now? That's the same ability as Uzumaki Mito possessed. So that little incident triggered his sensory abilities, acquiring Uzumaki's Kagura Shingon. No. He already possessed it, but those seals must have been blocking it. I see those seals were preventing him from reaching his full potential for showing some respect and not being the same loud idiot. I'll explain what really happened. Well, that is if you rip a bit of the seals so I'm able to connect to your senses, thus making me able to watch the world from your eyes. Humming a bit in thought, Naruto finally conceded deal. Then listen, because I won't repeat myself. After you woke up, outside Mindscape, no Kuni, few miles from Konoha, Naruto finally opened his eyes. He had been in his Mindscape somewhat look like hours, but in the reality only few minutes has passed. He needed to organize his thoughts, as what he had just learned was something huge, and if what the fox said was true, then he had what it takes to be the strongest shinobi in the world. But he didn't have any time to dwell on it, as his senses picked up on 26 chakra signatures. 5 were really close to his position, 20 just a few meters behind, and the last of them was a bit far away behind the group, and he instantly knew he wouldn't be able to outrun all of them since these were ANBU. The first group of 5 were friendly. Bachan. The second group didn't have portray any emotions. What the hell, these guys must be after me. Though it's weird, I can't read anything coming from them. The last one he recognized instantly, and it made his blood boil. TSH. Not even 5 minutes later, he could sense a battle starting if the many spikes of chakra were any indicator, but it seemed some of them succeed on passing through Tsunade's ANBU. Just as he reached that conclusion, he was forced to jump as multiple shurikens struck the ground where he was standing, and instantly he was surrounded by 5 ANBUs which had a blank mask with a kanji for any. The probably leader spoke. Kyubi, surrender yourself now, otherwise we will use force. An impassive face was their response, which kind of surprised them, as it differed a lot from the reports that said this boy was brash, an idiot who didn't have what it takes to be a shinobi. though they tensed as the blonde made a crossed hand seal and they knew what was coming. Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu, a massive plume of smoke out of thin air as 50 copies of the blonde-haired appeared. They cursed themselves for giving a moment of distraction to their opponent. The clones instantly grabbed a kunai from their pouches and took the battle head-on. The ANBUs immediately took action with their respective tantos, slashing left and right and killing the clones with ease. But that was what the original Naruto wanted, as he saw an opening behind one of them, and with the help of his clone, a ball compressed with pure chakra was thrusted upon the back of that ANBU. Rasengan! An explosion rocketed through the area as Naruto used the smoke created by his jutsu to hide behind a tree. That Rasengan, somehow I could easily control it way better than before, and if the little time my clone took to create the Rasengan was any indicator, it's like my chakra control improved tenfold. No, way more. He was snapped out of his thoughts as a chakra-enhanced punch smashed on his face, sending him crashing into another tree. Naruto cursed himself for being so distracted with his thoughts that almost got himself killed. He gazed over the 4 remaining ANBUs as they leaped towards him with their tantos ready, quickly creating another clone of himself. Both went through a chain of hand seals. He was glad that he started to read some of her mother's ninjutsu scrolls as soon as Tsunade left the hospital. The blonde inhaled a good amount of hair before releasing a huge gust towards his opponents. Futon de Tapa. The ANBUs were unprepared as they thought the brat didn't have any elemental jutsu on his arsenal and took the massive gust head-on, though it didn't do much, and that proved the inexperience on using the jutsu. But that gave Naruto the time he needed. The ANBUs tensed as they detected the massive spike of chakra and the insane bloodthirsty in front of them, and they immediately knew that this battle took up a big notch as they saw a red chakra enveloping the blonde. A shaped red tail formed behind the former Konoha. Knowing what this meant, the 4 ANBUs started going through their respective hand seals. Suetun Mizurappa, Katan, Gakaku no Jutsu, Katan, Hausenka no Jutsu, Raitun, Jibashi. A massive explosion caused by the multiple jutsus could be felt from miles away, and the ANBUs were taking deep breaths, mainly of relief, as the battle could have been totally different. But just as the smoke cleared, they immediately went high alert as there was no body in the crater, and as they were trying to come up with a good reason for this, 2 claws of pure red chakra were thrusted upon 2 ANBUs' chest. They didn't even have time to scream. The remaining 2 ANBUs, including the captain, had a look of horror as their emotions slipped for the second time, and that was all it took as a red blur made itself known, and the last thing they saw and heard were 2 condensed purplish balls of chakra and a deep demonic voice before they left the living realm. Don't underestimate me. Shui Rasenrengen. As the smoke from once again another explosion vanished, the same red chakra could be seen receding to the blonde's body, before taking small deep breaths and again taking notice on how easily he could now control that form without going berserk, and the fact that his body seemed a lot stronger and faster. The talk with Kyubi moments ago resounded in his mind, and he now had to agree with everything he said as it was the only possible explanation. Alright, the nuisances are gone, let move. Rasengan! Boom! Another explosion that shook the entire field was heard as a figure with a tall and well-built with fair-skinned back flipped out of the smoke originated by his jutsu. He had waist-length, spiky white hair that he usually ties back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs framing his face. There were red lines under his eyes which extended further down his face. He supported a frown on his face as he spoke. It seems your senses have improved. I guess I trained you a bit too good. Just as he finished speaking, the smoke cleared, revealing a completely destroyed log indicating the use of Kawarimi. The tall man extended his senses, immediately pinpointing his target behind a tree. He vanished in a blur of pure speed as another condensed ball formed on the top of the palm of his hand towards his former part-time student. Naruto was in a bad shape. Although he was succeed in substituting himself at the last second, it seemed he still got injured on his left arm, rendering it useless, and would take a few minutes to regenerate it. He took a few deep breaths as his mind was working overdrive on how to escape this new big problem. He had to curse himself again for not using his new sensory abilities and the fact that he completely forgot the last person that was coming for him. Why are they coming after me? They just banished me. It makes no sense whatsoever. I see. He probably wants to seal the QB. TSH. He was broken out of his thoughts as his eyes detected a movement on his side. Although his eyes saw it, his body didn't comply with him, and for the second time in a span of 1 week, he was feeling hopeless as he heard the man that not too long ago entered his life to make it better, shouting, Rasengan! He braced himself for the impending pain, and boy, he was sure this was going to hurt. Raikiri! Naruto heard another familiar voice followed by an all too familiar bird's chipping sound before he was sent backwards from the explosion caused by the clashing of both jutsus. The Uzumaki sighed in relief as another man that just a few days ago he was cursing for not teaching him properly, saved him. Sorry I'm late. You see, there was this black cat that crow. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. The now named Kakashi just smiled, not getting angry for the fact that his former student interrupted his awesome and believable excuse. The silver man brought his hand to the hideout, slightly lifting it, and a second later snapped his other eye open, revealing a 3-tomoed red eye, and narrowing it to the spiky, white-haired man in front of him. Jiraiya-sama, that's as far as you go. He gave a subtle nod to his former student, who took the hint, and without hesitation left the clearing towards his new home, not before saying his own sent. Farewell, sensei. The man named Jiraiya frowned even deeply as he saw his target escaping before narrowing dangerously his eyes at the reason for failing what he had planned to do. Brat, I'm going to pummel you into the ground for disrespecting your superiors. Kakashi had actually a thoughtful look as he didn't remember being disrespectful. Nevertheless, he tensed his muscles for this fight that he knew was probably going to lose. But before they couldn't even take a step forward, a commanding voice was heard that made the white-haired pale. Enough! Both legendary shinobis, in their own right, turned their gazes towards the new voice. Hokage-sama/Tsunadeheim. Time skip. Nami no Kuni. It's been a few hours since Naruto got saved by his former sensei. Although he admitted that he held some grudge for the teaching he received, the blonde was grateful that the silver-haired had came right on time to save him. His arm had already regenerated as well as his body not too long after he left the battlefield. It kinda irked him to leave Kakashi alone, but it had to be done. There was no hideout strapped to his forehead, so he had no obligations. During the travel he had thought heading towards Yuki no Kuni, now Haru no Kuni, Koikiheim would probably welcome him with open arms, but then he remembered about a specific hideout he could use without problems. Zabaz's hideout. That name brought him many good memories, and none of them were about his team but a certain black-haired girl, Haku. Now that he could think straight with a clear mind, he could tell that the first woman he truly loved was the Hiatan user. She was the one that completely understood him. The pain, the loneliness, the value of precious people. They had instantly formed a bond. They spent the remaining days together before the imminent attack on the bridge. She was the first girl he had ever kissed, even though he knew she was an enemy at the time, but he couldn't care less. It broke his heart seeing her die. If there was one thing his old self done well, were those few days with Haku. Stop brooding, you're making me sick. The demoniac voice broke him out of his thoughts. He took notice of the understanding and regret in his tone, but he put those thoughts to the side as he finally arrived his destination. Whoa, it's actually quite big. Indeed, the hideout itself had a good size. It was an isolated area which was perfect for his future training. For the first time during the trip, he let out a grin. This was perfect. Nami no Kuni hideout. A figure could be seen in the middle of several craters. A tall, well-built man, blue eyes and spiky, blonde hair with jaw-length bangs framing either side of his face. He wore black armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit. This armor is constructed from numerous metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore 2 bands on each arm. 2 pouches strapped to each leg. White bandages wrapped around his ankles followed by black sandals. Finally, strapped on his waist was a pure black-colored katana with a red and black yin-yang on the hilt, and a fox demon engraved onto the blade, the Kaminoikuri. This was Uzumaki Naruto, now 17 years old. For the last 3 years he has been training relentlessly on every shinobi arts he could. Although in his childhood he only had a knack for ninjutsu, during this last few years he discovered his insane talent for kenjutsu and fuinjutsu as well. But the one thing he has been working on since the day one was his Kekkei Genkai. Flashback. Naruto woke up on his new bed. He couldn't remember the last time he had such a nice sleep, though that probably was because of his new life. He was excited, and had he still been his old self, he would be jumping around and shouting about what he was about to do in case it proved right. Naruto calmly walked into the middle of his future not too big training grounds with a thoughtful face. Q, are you sure this will work? There was a grumble he didn't quite understand before he heard the all too familiar voice that he would come to cherish in the future. Just try it. Place your hand on the ground, concentrate, and direct your chakra into it. Naruto did just that as he placed his hand on the ground, closing his eyes and let his chakra flow through his body and directing it to the ground. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he has been concentrating for at least 2 minutes before he snapped his eyes open, and at that moment a medium-sized tree emerged right in front of him, much to his and his tenant's shock and awe. So, I do really possess the famous Mokutan. But how can this be? I'm not Hashirama's descendant as far as I know. So, how can I have his Kekkei Genkai? That's probably because the Mokutan is not a normal Kekkei Genkai you're used to see. This involves the nature itself, I'm not really sure. Hashirama was always an idiot just like you in the past and had the same pure soul as you, so maybe the Mokutan has a probability, even if it's very low, to be unlocked on pure souls. Well, it doesn't matter. Naruto hummed a bit before replying, yeah, you're right. Now, let's get to training. I'll use my Ka-chan's advice right from the beginning as we can't waste any more time. Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu. Flashback end. It's rare the times that he leaves the compound except when he has to gather enough food to last for a few months. Talking about food, he had to reduce on his ramen meals per Kyuubi's orders, as the beast explained that was the main reason he was still short, even though his body had slightly changed after the incident. Nevertheless, he was overjoyed when he cooked different types of food and tasted almost even better than ramen. During the 6th month, the blonde went to the Zabuza and Haku's grave, and there he found the Kubikuri Bocho. He decided to take it with him and use it to the best of his abilities to make Zabuza proud. It was then that he remembered the legacy left to him by his mother. The Kaminoikuri. Flashback. We find Naruto sitting cross-legged on the ground a little bit far away from his clones who were working on the basics of many shinobi arts using the scrolls left by his mother. Right now he was gazing over the bottom of the letter given to him before he left Konoha. Pushing some chakra to one of the seals there, A plume of smoke exploded from the seal before revealing a beautiful pure black katana. Naruto could feel the intense power flowing through it, and weirdly it was like the sword was calling for him. Shaking his head to those thoughts, he placed his left hand over the hilt, and instantly a white flash blinded his eyes before he felt some of his chakra being drained to the katana. Is it changing? The black katana that seconds ago was just that, pure black, now had an engraved fox demon onto the blade. He immediately reached the obvious conclusion. It's reacting to my chakra. The fox is a dead giveaway. Indeed, young Uzumaki. A grave tone snapped out of his thoughts and the blonde immediately narrowed his eyes at the blade. I remember now your ascension sword. You're right on that. Hmo. It seems you're my latest disciple's offspring. Naruto stopped for a second hearing that response. Before answering Kachan, disciple? Without missing a bit, it replied indeed disciple. Up until now, only the Shodame Uzukage, Ashira Uzumaki, was the only one capable of wielding me to my full potential and the one worth of me calling him master. A grin was forming on Naruto's face as he heard the last statement. But this was not his usual grin. This was almost a sadistic bordering bloodthirsty grin that sent shivers on Kyuubi's spine and the Kaminoikure's metal. Let's begin. Flashback end. It took almost a whole 2 years, but he's almost there. Kaminoikure had been teaching the legendary lost art of the Hiten Mitsurujiryu, and surprisingly enough it worked perfectly with the type of body that Naruto had. Speed and endurance. His taijutsu grew leaps and bounds, although it took a lot of time to master the Uzumaki's Hajeshi Yuza style, but in the end, it was worth it. This style was all about speed, flexibility and precision. And was the precision part that took some time to master, as it was very similar to the Hyuga's Juken sending bits of chakra through the fingers. Naruto took it to the next level, adding one of his elemental affinities. But that's a story for another time. Affinities. At first Naruto thought he would only possess Futon as his element, since the jutsu he used against the ANBUs was made with relatively ease, but then he unlocked his Kekkei Genkai, Mokutan, giving him Suiton and Doton. So he just decided to get over with those annoying doubts, and using a small piece of paper that came with one of the books called Elements and Affinities, shape it to your will sealed in the scroll. So it came as a surprise when one of the parts of the paper wrinkled to a mini ball, indicating a very strong affinity to Raiton as well. His bloodthirsty grin didn't leave his face for the rest of the day. It was during the second year of his training that he remembered something that made him curse himself, as he had totally forgot about it. Flashback. Kuchio's no jutsu. A small plume of smoke, much to Naruto's surprise, as he put quite a bit of chakra to that, revealing a short, green toad with white hair styled in somewhat of a mohawk, very thick eyebrows and a small goatee. The same toad turned his surprised gaze over Naruto, and immediately his face contorted to one of sympathy. The young Uzumaki instantly read his emotions with his improved sensors and knew what was going on. Nice to meet you, Naruto-chan. Name's Fukasaku. I'm one of the elder toads of Mount Myaboku, the toad's realm. Naruto had an impassive face, as although he could read many positive emotions coming from him, this was still Jiraiya's summons. The elder toad seemed to have read his mind as he continued. You're probably wondering why you still can summon the toads HM. To make it short, Jiraiya is no longer our summoner, thus making you the official holder of the Gamma contract. His impassive face morphed into a surprised one. Who wouldn't? This old toad has just told him that they dumped their first summoner. That was a lot to take in. I guess you know what happened 2 years ago then. The elder toad stroked his small goatee before replying indeed. Tsunade of the Namekijin contacted us and explained the whole story. We are quite ashamed for Konoha that we swore to protect and Jiraiya-chan's actions. We've been waiting for you to contact us, as if we just appeared out of nowhere you would thought that we had ill intentions, so. Uzumaki Naruto, I, Fukasaku, one of the Nide Zengama, 2 great sage toads, declare you the official holder for the Gamma contract scroll when you become a Sennin, which will probably take some time, that is. But we believe in you. There was a determined look on Fukasaku's face as he finished his statement. Naruto saw this and gave him a nod that said he was ready for whatever they throw at him, which made the elder toad inward smile. We meet at last Yajan no Ko. Flashback end. So for his last year, Naruto was apprenticed by Fukasaku 3 days a week, and the rest were used for honing, mastering and creating jutsus, as well as pushing his body even further with the resistance steals. He created many combinations with several toads, but the major boost in his abilities was because of the senjutsu. It actually came very easy for him, maybe because of his Kekkei Genkai, but he didn't really care. He could almost activate his Sennin Moto instantaneous. Almost. This natural energy gave both his ninjutsu and taijutsu an amazing boost. With it, he came up with several ideas for new techniques and recreate many others. He couldn't wait to try it out. The only thing he was in need was experience, even though the toads were good sparring partners, but he kinda missed have someone human to talk to. He didn't make any contact with Tazuna, Tsunami nor Inari. He loved them, but he just didn't want anyone to know he was there. If word got out, there would be many groups coming for him. Although he was very powerful, he couldn't take on multiple armies by himself yet. Present time, Nami no Kuni town. Uzumaki Naruto was walking by the town without his normal henge. No need for that, since today he would be leaving. His summons had gathered enough information about the elemental nations and the 5 great villages. He had shown some emotions when Gaara Suppai, a spy toad, told him recent news about Tsunade, and their new Godame Kazakage, Sabaka no Gaara. That was really surprising. His friend finally got acknowledged by his village, and maybe it was time for a little visit. The next one was Kurogakure, as it seemed the rebellion forces had won and consequently killed the tyrant Yondaime Mizukage, Yugura, and consecrated Meiturumi as the new Godame Mizukage. This happened 1 year after Naruto started his training, so right now, 2 years later, Kiri might be a good place to check out. There was not really any interesting news about Kumogakure. It seemed that with the Yondaime Raikage, the village has calmed down a lot when it comes to Kekei Genkais. He might go there just after visit his friend Gaara. Iwagakure has been moving a lot of his troops to his borders. There are rumors about them wanting to take revenge on Konoha now that they lost some allies because of their Jinchuriki. After word got out about the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki being banished, Nami no Kuni and Haru no Kuni had cut all ties with the village as Tazuna and Koiki, the respective daimyos, were very close to that person. This was a huge blow to their economy that made the majority of their civilians tremble in rage and a few shinobis shake their heads at the stupidity of the village and its people. There was a significant decrease of missions received which made everyone worried. The newly instated Kazakage, Gaara, and the leader of Takigakure, Shibuki, also threatened Konoha but didn't nullify or cancel any contracts between them, though there's a lot of tension. Konohagakure, that soul name still leaves a bad taste in his mouth. But when he heard his spy about what happened to that village, he had to let a small smile grace his lips. Though, one could see the slight concern in those icy blue eyes. Bachan, Kurinai-sensei Yugao-san, Hana-san, Tsuchiyaji-san, Ayam-chan, Iruka-sensei Kakashi. Naruto frowned. He couldn't leave his precious people nor his mother's students behind. He had to decide which village he would go to soon enough. Right now, he needed to head to Tsunade to check on his friend. With that in mind, he was about to vanish in one of his elemental shunshin's when a puff of smoke in front of him alerted him. He turned his gaze towards the toad with an impassive face waiting for it to speak, not even caring about the people that were observing this interaction in curiosity and shock as they never heard a toad speak, though they couldn't really hear what he was saying. Naruto-sama. There's urgent news. Your friend Gaara, the Kazakage, was kidnapped. Naruto immediately narrowed dangerously his icy blue eyes, and for a second the toad thought he saw small jolts of electricity dancing around but shook his head to that before relaying the information. He was kidnapped yesterday by 2 members of the Akatsuki. They are extracting his biju as we speak in some kind of hideout at Kawa no Kuni. You need to move now, otherwise you will not make in time. The toad didn't have to say twice. As soon as he finished his statement, the only indicator that Naruto had already vanished was the small breeze of wind towards the land of rivers. Time skip. Kawa no Kuni hideout. 9 figures stood on top of some strange fingers. Weirdly enough, 7 of them had no bodies visible. The only thing you could make out were their eyes, and the rest was like an hologram. All of them were in deep concentration, as in the middle of them stood Gaara, as a strange red energy seemed to be coming out of his mouth towards the mouth of a strange statue as a blue aura surrounded the Jinchuriki. One of the figures with yellow eyes snapped his eyes open, which went noticed by a pair of 4 ring-centric purple eyes and another pair of 3 tomoed red eyes. He finally spoke. We've got company. None of them showed any visible reaction, so he continued. 3 Konoha teams coming. Probably to rescue the Kazakage. The purple-eyed spoke for the first time. Who did they send? Maybe we can extract some information on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's whereabouts. Yu Vinazuka Kiba, Haruno Sakura led by Hatake Kakashi and Chiyo of Tsunade. Rock Lee, Hyuga Niji and Tenten led by Mado Gai. And finally, Yuhi Kurinai and Yuzuki Yugao. They still have quite some distance between each other, so the last 2 teams are probably backup. The Rinnegan wielder hummed a bit and thought before relaying his orders. That's quite a group they sent. Kisame and Itachi lend some chakra to Zetsu and stop Hatake and Gai's team. Kakuzu do the same and stall some time for us. If you are able to, kill them. His response were several nods before they followed their leader's plan. Few miles from the hideout, Kakashi, Sakura, Kiba and Chiyo been running non-stop as Akamaru had got Gaara's scent, so they couldn't waste any more time before it was too late. But before they could move forward to their destiny, a familiar face made Kakashi immediately tense, instantly ordering for his team to come to an halt. Hello Kakashi-san, it's been a while. Itachi, few miles behind. Team 9 of Konoha were running at high speeds towards their destination. Pakken, Kakashi's Niken, had told them where they were heading some hours ago, and the team all agreed to up their speeds to get to them the fastest as possible. But before they could go any further, Hyuga Niji suddenly stopped, making his team do the same as his Byakugan detected an individual with a monstrous amount of chakra. Oh, we meet again, Green Beast. There's no one to interrupt us now, any. You. Ito, who are you? Few miles to the side, Kurinai and Yugao been moving at a decent pace. They were supposed to meet with Team Guy first, but it seems they picked up the speed much to their concern, as that only meant they were late. Any further thoughts were stopped as a figure shimmered in front of them. Their senses went high alert as they saw the black robe with red clouds. Genjutsu Mistress, Yuhi Kurinai, a rank worth of 3 million ryos. And Kenjutsu Mistress, Yuzuki Yugao, high A rank worth of 5,500,000 ryosa. That's quite a bounty. Kakuzu, former jounin of Takigakure. Time skip. Kawa no Kuni. A figure was moving at high speed towards a certain location, His senses had picked up several familiar chakra signatures. Some had made his blood boil, but there were others that actually got him concerned as they were getting weaker by minute. He pumped more chakra to his legs, vanishing in a yellow blur. Few minutes later he arrived, and using his almost perfect chakra control to suppress his chakra, what he saw shook him in rage as he saw a figure with familiar clothes about to finish a group that were kneeling on the ground exhausted. Without hesitation, he jumped out of the bushes as a swirling blue ball materialized on top of his palm as it kept growing by the second. Kurenai and Yugao were having a bad time. When they engaged the Akatsuki member, they were quickly able to get the advantage because of their impeccable teamwork. But everything went down after they supposedly killed him with one of their combinations. They let their guard down after the Kenjutsu mistress plunged her sword through his heart, and it was all it took for the weird man to turn the tide of the battle. With an earthen chance punch, he broke Yugao's ribs, and after that 3 weird creatures came out of his back that made quick work with Kurenai. They were still able to kill 2 of these creatures, but now their chakra was running low, and they were exhausted, not counting the several bruises all over their body. They shared a small smile to each other, as they knew what was going to happen. You fought well, even though it's not my original body. It still has 70% of my chakra. You would probably beat me if you knew about my secret beforehand. Both kunoichis were shocked as they were about to get killed by a man that wasn't even the real one. They didn't know what to make of it, but nevertheless, it was a blow to their pride as a kunoichi. The only black creature still standing on the side of the man leaped towards both of them as both of his thread arms started to get covered by lightning. Yugao pushed her body to the limit, years of working with ANBU paying off, and quickly jumped in front of one of her best friends, giving her a tearful smile over her shoulder. Goodbye, Nai-chan. Kurenai watched in horror as her friend stood to take the blow for her, as her eyes moistured as realization hit her what she was about to do. This is the end, right? Kenkata. Time seemed to slowing down as both fists of the black creature that were covered with lightning was about to struck Yugao before a shadow loomed over them. Otama Rasengan. Boom. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes at the sudden voice and explosion. So focused he was at this new development that he never saw a black blur that passed through him. The last thing he heard was a click sound similar to of a hilt's sheltering. He ten Mitsurujiryu, sure no ko, a clean cut. Kakuzu's body split in half. No blood was visible on the newcomer's blade. Yugao and Kurenai watched in shock and awe as they watched this man saving them at the last second. Both of them sighed in relief, but their eyes widened at the familiar but deeper voice. Are you alright, Kurenai-chan, Yugao-chan? Both kunoichis turned their gazes at the familiar voice, and their eyes seemed to widen even more if possible at the handsome man as they took his features, shoulder-length blonde hair, icy blue eyes and 3 whisker marks that seemed to be disappearing. Wait, W whiskers? And Naruto? Said man watched in amusement as both kunoichis recognized him and raised his perfectly shaped eyebrow at the pink tint that formed on her cheeks. He put those thoughts for later as his face contorted to an impassive face before continuing. Although I would love to have a nice conversation with you, we need to move. We're already late. Without waiting for their response, 2 replicas of him materialized out of thin air at her sides and placed them on their backs. Ignoring their embarrassed protests, they went on their way towards their real mission. Time skip. Kawa no Kuni Akatsuki hideout. The battle was already going on if the several craters and destroyed puppets were any indicator. The 3 of them immediately knew they were late, and sharing a nod, Kurenai and Yugao, who had been recovering and thanks to the clones using some aerial ninjutsu, they recovered most of her wounds and had some time to rest, went to help the group fighting inside the cave, and Naruto ran towards the others and had to raise an eyebrow at the interesting jutsu someone was using far away as the space where a white creature was, seemed to be distorting. As he was running, Naruto closed his eyes in concentration and forming an hand seal, he extended his senses. Hitsuji Kagura Shingon. Not even 2 seconds later, his eyes snapped open and narrowed at the sky. Kakashi's chakra is deteriorating really fast, so that means he's the responsible for that weird jutsu. Kiba is being useless as always. Gotta hurry up. With that in mind, Naruto formed another hand seal and his body exploded with lighting before he vanished in a sound of thunderclap. Kaminari no Ugoki. With Kakashi and Kiba, one was breathing heavily, and the other was shaking in rage. The former was cursing himself for not having trained this specific jutsu more often, as it required massive amounts of chakra just to sustain it, and now he couldn't do that as a certain brash and loud member of their group didn't shut his mouth. Come on, Kakashi-sensei, he's escaping. For the 10th time, Kakashi sighed, not even bothering to answer his companion, and instead gathered in huge amount of chakra on his eye, snapping it halfway open as his body was getting heavy and heavy by the minute. I won't fail this time, Kamie. He narrowed his eye to the flying figure above him, and a second later the space where he was directing his gaze started to distort. A blonde-haired figure was having a really bad time. He had already lost one arm to the Ichibi no Jinchuriki, and now he had to deal with an unknown Jinkaken ninjutsu that seemed to suck everything to God knows where. As he was thinking how to escape this situation, the area around him distorted again, and he gritted his teeth as his remaining arm was sucked into the void ball. So concentrated he was on trying to endure the sudden pain and loss of his second and last arm that he missed another figure rotating himself with his partner. His eyes widened as his senses skyrocketed, and he forced his body to jump as what looked like a tornado destroyed his dragon clay. Gutsuga. It all happened too fast. In a second he was on top of his beautiful clay art, and in the other he was falling from it. Maneuvering his body, he landed on a random branch, watching the brown-haired boy clawing the head of what once was his dragon that contained the dead Jinchuriki. He narrowed his eyes behind the boy where the main problem really was. That kid isn't that good, the real problem is Kakashi. I would never expect someone with such ocular prowess with the Sharingan just like Itachi. He ignored the rant and empty threats of the boy as a smile formed on his lips. I can play with you another day, kid. My job is done. Ja-ni. Oh no, you won't, Suga. It was actually quite fast, and he didn't have enough time to escape, but after seeing that move so many times it was easy to follow the movement. And he was not a member of Akatsuki for nothing. Enhancing his leg with Doton Chakra, he timed the exact moment to thrust a powerful kick onto the jutsu's weakness, right in the middle of the rotation. Kiba ignored the shouts of Kakashi and spun violently his body towards his opponent, not even caring about the leg movement of the Akatsuki member. He would destroy him. But before they could clash with each other, Kakashi widened his red eye as he picked up a ridiculous fast blur intercepting the foot and the spinning boy with his bare chakra-enhanced hands. The newcomer ignored the surprised and shocked looks of them before pushing right on chakra through his left hand that had stopped the foot, and watched and amused at the cries of pain of the blonde-haired before grabbing the other boy and jumped to where a familiar silver-haired was as his mind was racing miles per second. My sensory abilities picked up the buildup of Doton chakra, that's why it was so effective. Right on must be his weakness overall. He just picked up the wrong guy, oh well. Naruto trashed the boy he was holding on the branch, and he immediately had to sidestep a punch from the same person and had to wince at the high-pitched voice. You idiot! Who the hell do you think you are, dead last? Oh joy, now I can kill you, demon! Kiba was about to leap towards Naruto again when a strong grip caught his shoulders. He turned around to shout again when his eyes met with the stern and dangerous gaze of a red eye. You will stop right now as we still have something to deal with. The Inuzuka wanted to protest, but the narrowed eyes of his sensei made him think otherwise. The Chunin huffed in annoyance before turning his gaze towards the Akatsuki member who locked eyes with the person that had injured him. Blonde hair, blue eyes, is that whisker marks? That's Kyuubi Jinchuriki, you've been hiding for quite some time now. I would love to show you my art right now, but it seems the leader is calling me, You will die today, Deidara. Naruto narrowed his icy blue eyes as the now named Deidara started to chew the remaining of his clay, and his eyes widened at the build-up on chakra and immediately knew what he was trying to do. Deidara's body started to expand as inwardly he was smirking, as with this jutsu he might even be able to defeat the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and get revenge for what he'd done just moments ago. But before he couldn't think further, an electric blade shape or spear was thrusted into his chest, and he could only blink as his jutsu stopped in that instant. Chidori Iso, Kakashi, Kiba and Deidara widened their eyes in shock, awe and fear at the high level of elemental shape transformation. Especially the former, as he had a shocked but proud look on his face. That's a variation of my Chidori. It didn't stop there as his free hand went through a chain of hand seals before gritting his teeth at the level of difficulty of his next action. Above the Akatsuki member, moisture in the air was being gathered, and 2 seconds later it started to take shape of several water needles. With a grunt, they were lunged and thrusted into several parts of Deidara's body, who could only scream in pain as some of the water needles made contact with the lighting spear, sending even higher jolts through his body. Sensatsu Susho. Naruto cancelled his jutsu as he observed the damage of both of his techniques. This was quite strong combination he came up in the last second. He absently nodded at the result, and if the twitching body of Deidara was any indicator, it was quite effective. He was about to move to finish off the poor Akatsuki member when his sensors picked up another chakra signature, and not a second later the area around the laid-down Deidara distorted and a swirling vortex made itself known before an unknown figure came out of it. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the orange mask with a lone hole, and his eyes widened as a 3-tomoed Sharingan seemed to be glaring at him. But before he could think further, he heard a loud growl inside of him. It's him! He's the flesh bag that controlled me when you were born. Naruto had to force down the Kyuubi's chakra that was trying to come out of him. The Uzumaki narrowed dangerously his eyes as the atmosphere seemed to drop several degrees and electricity started to dance around his eyes. The newcomer finally spoke in a grave tone. Kyuubi Jinchuriki, been quite a pain in the ass to find you. You became quite strong in 3 years though. You should just surrender yours. A lightning-fast kunai cut his statement, but just as it was about to plunge on his head, the same kunai just passed through him. Naruto widened a bit his eyes at that as his mind started to work overdrive. What the hell was that? An afterimage? No, I noticed a slight build-up of chakra on his eyes, so it's related to that teleportation he just used when he appeared out of nowhere. And that Jakuken ninjutsu looked awfully like the one Kakashi-sensei used. That means it's a Sharingan-based jutsu. Who are you? The masked man gazed in amusement at the impassive face of the Jinchuriki. He hummed a bit before replying. I go by many names. Some call me Tobi. Years ago though I was called the Uchiha no Borai, the ghost of the Uchiha. Naruto and Kakashi widened his eyes in shock as realization hit them. Yes, I'm the co-founder of Konoha no Sato, Uchiha Madara. Inside of Naruto a raging fox was swirling dangerously his tails, but he momentarily stopped at that proclamation. He's lying! Indeed, what he says about being a Uchiha is true, and that foul chakra is the same as him. But no way he's the bastard he's proclaiming to be. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki was in a turmoil as he was trying to decipher this mystery. After a few seconds he decided to save that new information his tenant gave him as he didn't want anyone know about him and the fox friendship before addressing the man called Toby. "What do you want?" The proclaimed Madara noticed the lack of fear of the blonde-haired. He disregarded that observation as nothing before replying, "It's still too early to know. Be prepared as we will be coming for you, Uzumaki Naruto." And just as he finished that statement, the area around him distorted again, and with Deidara on his shoulders, a swirling vortex enveloped them before disappearing just like that. Naruto narrowed his eyes as their signature just vanished out of his senses. Not even his Kagura Shingon could detect where did he go. That just proves that technique is indeed a Jinkiken ninjutsu, and a dangerous one too. It surpasses the Hiraishin. I really need to finish it if I want to easily counter that. The Kubikura Bocho wielder, not that they knew, turned his gaze towards the Konohanins and with a sigh he said, "Alright, let's go." With two nods though one reluctant, they left the clearing with Gaara towards the other group. On their way, Kakashi focused on the man that was carrying him on the back, trying to analyze the events that just occurred. "You've grown well, Naruto." Time skip. Kawa no Kuni Unknown Hill. The travel was uneventful, but as soon as they made contact with the other Konoha group, Naruto was immediately aware of the many glares and few apologetic looks towards him. Though he didn't care and promptly ignored when a certain pink-haired banshee shouted at him. Instead he just stayed a little behind the group where Kurenai and Yugao were. They had explained what happened during the battle with Sasori. Firstly, the battle was going badly for the Konoha plus Chiyo group, but as soon as they joined them, it immediately turned the tide and they eventually were able to defeat and kill the Kagutsu master. Though, it was a pain in the ass as Sakura kept doing mistakes after mistakes that almost killed Chiyo. The Chunin Kunoichi was still very inexperienced in the battlefield even though she got a little stronger. She's been trying to replicate Tsunade's monstrous strength, but she's still far from mastering it. The teen tried to get the Hokage to apprentice her but was unsuccessful every time and always got the same answer: "I don't want to deal with weak fangirls who, instead of taking their career seriously, are still dreaming about their knight armor boy." Sakura was smart enough to know what she meant and would always find herself plunged into a wall after the shouts of "nonsense, old hags, love," and Sasuke-kun. So now we find Naruto, Yugao, Kurenai and now Kakashi and Hyuga watching a little away from the rest of the group, plus the now arrived Tsunanines as Chiyo started executing a kenjutsu created by herself on Gaara, and the Uzumaki had to narrow his eyes as he could pick up the degradation of the elder's chakra coils as realization came upon him. She's sacrificing herself, I see. Such type of kenjutsu had to have its repercussions. Judging from his friend's reactions seconds later, they already came to the same conclusion. And with heavy heart, Naruto closed his eyes as if praying for the old woman. "Hope you find happiness in the afterlife, Chiyoba-san." Time skip. Konohagakure knows Sato Hokage's office. At the Hokage's office, a busty blonde woman was looking over the report given to her by Hatake Kakashi and trying to come to his senses as the look of shock still hadn't left her face since the group that was sent to rescue the Kazekage left. The level that Naruto showed in that short amount of time was astonishing, and she had to agree with the former ANBU that this was probably just a small tip of a huge iceberg. She was proud that her favorite ninja had become such powerhouse, though there was another part of her that was worried and concerned because she knew this was going to backfire on her for some reason. She could feel it. There was a knock on the door, and that feeling suddenly skyrocketed, but she steeled her nerves and with a grunt of acknowledged a person that she really didn't want to see enter the room, and now she realized what the feeling was all about. The person didn't waste his time with worthless greetings and immediately went to businesses. "Tsunade, I've got some interesting reports about the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. What are you planning to do now that he finally came out of hiding?" Meanwhile, Kurenai's apartment. After giving the report about the mission, Kurenai went all the way to look out for some people and gather them at her apartment, and this was an important assignment given to her and Yugao by Naruto himself. Sitting on her multiple couches were Yuzuki Yugao, Inuzuka Hana, Inuzuka Tsum, Yumino Iraka, Ichiraku Ayam, Ichiraku Tuji, Mitarashi Enko, and Hatake Kakashi. Although Enko wasn't supposed to be here, she didn't want her friend be left behind on this matter. The life that she had to endure during the last years and being one of her best friends had made the decision to bring her, as well, easy enough. Kakashi was another matter. After both mistresses found out about how the man showed favoritism towards the Uchiha, neglecting Naruto and Sakura in the process, they became furious at the lazy jounin. When Naruto told them to not hold a grudge towards him, and that even though he was angry, he wanted to give an opportunity to the copycat after a short confrontation between them in private before they left Tsunade. They were surprised when he actually arrived in time, though. They had an idea that was because the gray-haired knew that it was because of Naruto. Both Kunoichi stood in front of the group with a serious face showing that this was indeed urgent, and Enko, seeing this, had to suppress the urge to laugh at their faces and making any funny comment. They finally addressed them, Kurenai being the first to speak. "Thank you all for coming at such short notice and sorry for the troubles it could cause in your business, Tuji-san, Ayam-san," said. People just nodded as the red-eyed jounin continued. "In our last mission, we came across Naruto." Kurenai and Yugao watched the various emotions running through the eyes of the group except for Enko, who had a curious look, and Kakashi, who just nodded in agreement. The purple-haired ANBU took over. "We can go on to details later on, but first we want to know what are your thoughts about Konoha." Being the loudmouth of the group, Enko learned her thoughts about the topic. "Be known, you already know what I think about the village, or rather the villagers. Being Orochimaru's student dictated my fate, and I'm already aware that I won't be happy if I remain here. Everyone gave her sympathetic looks before Kakashi spoke. I failed Naruto. Although I knew that Yuhi was Sensei's son, I let the feeling that I should train Obito's kin get over my head. I've apologized and told him that I wished to make up for neglecting him. I want to be there for him, to support Sensei's legacy. Raikage just gave a short answer that spoke volumes for how he felt. He's my little Otuto. That was the same answer given by Ayame and Tsuji, though the latter said Naruto was like a son he never had. Tsum and Hana let out a feral grin that unknowingly made the villagers shiver for some reason and told them that they wished to protect their best friend and Sensei's son respectively so that they could confront Kushina when the time comes. After hearing everyone's reason, Kurinai let out a small smile before finally speaking. Fair enough. Be prepared because in 2 months' time. Back to Hokage's office. Danzo Shimura, one of the elders of Konoha. Tsunade knew right there and then that she was playing on dangerous grounds. This was a man that worked in the shadows. Though, she wasn't Hokage for nothing. First of all, you'll address me by Hokage-sama, Danzo-san. Secondly, Uzumaki Naruto is none of your damn business, though I'll answer nevertheless. We will not do anything. He was banished, and it was you who went all the way to get the daimyo to support your decision. So, why should I care now that Naruto finally decided to show himself? The now revealed Danzo gripped his cane for a second, which made Tsunade inwardly smirk before replying without any emotions. Nevertheless, we should get him back as my report stated a significant increase of his power. You probably know by now an organization that goes by the name Akatsuki who are or will capture every single Jinchuriki. We can't let them have this type of power or they will wage war as soon as they succeed, and I have no doubt they will since they have several S-ranked shinobis in their midst. Uchiha Itachi included. Without hesitation, Tsunade replied. Some anger was heard in her tone. Although you've some valid arguments, my answer remains the same. Now get out or Alame. Bodies dropping on the ground interrupted her before standing up and narrowing dangerously her eyes at Danzo and the 5 ANBUs with kanjis for engraved on their masks. But that was a mistake, as a second later her mind went blank. The last thing she saw was a furiously spinning blood-red eye with a certain design before letting out one last thought. Naruto, Koto Amatsukami. The root leader gazed over the emotionless face of Senju Tsunade just as how he planned to. This was a dangerous technique, but that's the main reason why he stole this eye. He was able to invade the woman's mind and control it. The only side effect is that he can only fully control one person at a time because he wasn't an Uchiha nor did he possess both Shirsui's eyes. He knew he couldn't just manipulate her using his eye since she had a strong mind, but if he unleashed all the power he could muster, he would succeed. And this was the proof, but by doing so, Danzo would not be able to use his Dijitsu special ability for the next 5 years, but by then he estimated that the Hokage's position would be at his grace, plus he just had to wait that span of time to use it again on the Jinchuriki when his root or any of the captures team Tsunade would send, capture and imprison him. The bandaged man turned his gaze over his subordinates and spoke. Erase these ANBU's memories and summon Jiraiya. After a choruses of hi Danzo-sama, he turned now to the emotionless Tsunade and ordered organize some teams to capture the Jinchuriki. Failure is not an option. If there's anyone who tries to protest or rebel, inform me and I'll resolve it by my own hands. He didn't wait for her reply as he turned around and left the room calmly as he came, though there was a very rare victorious and dark smirk plastered on his face. We can finally start the plan, Konoha's revolution. Konoha will finally be at the top of the foods chain soon and conquer everything. I should contact that damn snake so we can start our alliance. Time skip. Kaminari no Kuni. Been roughly 2 weeks since Naruto departed from Tsunade. During that time he had received many reports from his toads about a certain village, Konoha. If his toads were right, there was a significant change in their demeanor. Many of their troops were moving to the borders, and this small information made him surprised and suspicious at the same time. What's Bachan thinking? He had to make contact with the people he swore to protect to know what was going on, as this surprising move was going to make him approach wherever he went more cautious. He didn't know their intentions, and so that's why he was currently moving towards Kumogakure to spend there some time and lay low to get some information first from his summons, and then wait for Kurinai, Yugao, and all the others' response. This is weird. Didn't Kurinai spoke with her and Shizen-chan? Or is this her answer to what I was planning? What he didn't know was that neither Kurinai nor Yugao had the time to speak with Tsunade, as when they had gathered with everyone, Tsunade and Shizen were at a council meeting, so they just brushed it off and thought to confront her the next day, knowing their Hokage's temper and antics of drinking sake after each meeting. Nevertheless, Naruto kept running at a decent pace before suddenly halt as his senses went full alert thanks to an high spike of demonic chakra. He narrowed his eyes at the direction he felt it coming from as he heard an all too familiar voice from his mind. No doubt, that's Hano no Kaibyo or Nibi's chakra. I know that she never was a bloodthirsty biju unlike many of us, so there's something wrong. We need to move. Naruto didn't need to be said twice as he pumped chakra to his legs and vanished in a blur of speed towards the location. His anger started to build up inside of him as one of his kins were probably in danger. Jolts of electricity started to dance around his icy blue eyes as he forced himself to move even faster. Let me be in time. Meanwhile, Kaminari no Kuni, unknown town, Niyujito, Nibi's Jinchuriki, was having a bad day. It all started when she had to accept a mission that the damn council demanded of her. She knew they hated her, but since she was only a jounin and said mission had the stamp of the Raikage, she reluctantly accepted. But as soon as she got into the location to retrieve some important scroll that supposedly contained some major informations about the other villages, she knew something was wrong. The empty town was a dead giveaway, and her suspicions were right, and if it wasn't for her decent sensory abilities she would have been practically dead, or impaled by a scythe out of nowhere. The blonde woman had always cherished her relationship with her Biju. Although she was kinda of weird and a pervert, she was family. Yugito knew in that moment that the stamp was probably a fake one, as a Yandame Raikage would never sell her like that. But she couldn't dwell more on it, as she was about to have the fight of her life if the power that at least one of the two mans in front of her was giving out. She was proven right. After a long battle she was forced to unleash the full power of her Biju, and after lunging a powerful Baijidama that obliterated half of the empty town, she was surprised by the fact that one of them had still survived, and not only that, he seemed relatively fine. Author's note: I don't know how Haiden was able to survive a battle head-on with a Biju, in the canon, even though he is supposed to be an immortal. But being the dumb he is, in my opinion, there's no way he was able to withstand a fight with a Biju where he doesn't even use any type of jutsu except for the ritual stuff. Needless to say, he's dead, or basically, his body just went poof after a Baijidama. Hope you understand. The Kumo's jounin knew that this was going to be a difficult battle. Her body was exhausted from using such powerful technique, as this was double-edged jutsu used for last resorts, but it seemed that she was outclassed, and her opponent knew that as he started to walk on her direction, seeing the Nibi's chakra receding. Yugito started to cough blood as she was on her knees because of the strain on her chakra coils before the footsteps stopped a few meters in front of her. The unknown figure spoke Nibi's Jinchuriki. Not bad. You actually managed to kill my partner though, I could care less. He was annoying. Nevertheless, my job is done, and you'll be dead in a few hours. She couldn't reply as she had to spit another gob of blood, not noticing the approaching threads on her way, but before it could impale the woman, a shower of electricity exploded from his body as a compressed ball of energy was thrusted upon his back, followed by an explosion. Raitun Sanda Apu. The same explosion made Yugito snap out of his state before lifting her head, and to her surprise, she was being carried by an unknown blonde man. She blushed slightly at the contact and the small comment that Nibi made, but she quickly hid it because of the situation she was currently in, and so, she spoke. Who are you and what are you doing? The blonde man settled the woman on the ground some distance away from who he was able to note, an Akatsuki member, before locking eyes with the Jinchuriki. You can call me Naruto. I'm obviously here to save you as you're my kin, though you can't sense it as I'm able to suppress its chakra. I was on my way towards Kumo to spend some time there, but I felt a huge spike of chakra and had to come. Yugito narrowed her eyes at the information but relaxed as she detected no ill intentions, and that he was speaking the truth. Before she could continue with her interrogation, they were rudely interrupted by some footsteps as the smoke cleared to reveal the same figure who seemed completely healed, but Naruto narrowed his eyes as he knew better. His chakra dropped? That should have killed him, no questions asked. What did he do? I've got no information on him apart from his name. I need to know what is going on. He was snapped out of his thoughts as the man spoke. QB Jinchuriki, it seems I'll be able to capture you as well. You gave Deidara quite a beating. The Uzumaki crossed his arms over his chest, an impassive face not giving any emotions before replied Kakuzu, former member of Takigakure. Before the now named Kakuzu could answer, both him and Naruto tensed as a new figure smashed on the ground between them, sparks of electricity dancing furiously around his body. Yugito let out a gasp at the newcomer as tears threatened to fall from her eyes. Kakuzu had now sweat falling from his head, and Naruto narrowed his eyes at the kanji for Yandame Raikage on the figure's robe before smirking. The Raikage narrowed dangerously his eyes at the Akatsuki member, already knowing what probably happened, ignoring the other man that was standing beside Yugito. His voice spoke volumes on how much he was restraining his anger. You'll die for what you've done to Yugito-chan. In a blink of an eye, he was standing in front of Kakuzu, who had widened his eyes in shock as a massive arm split his head from his shoulder. Blood exploded from his body. Rariato. Raikage let out a deep breath as the electricity stopped flowing around his body as he walked towards the two Jinchurikis. He noticed the narrowed eyes of the blonde man, but before he could ask, his body tensed as the temperature had risen out of nowhere. He turned around just to see a wave of fire that was already in front of him. Katan Zukoku! Naruto clapped his hands as moisture gathered around the Raikage before a wall of water materialized out of thin air, standing protectively as the fire smashed against it, creating a good amount of steam. Suetun, Suj and Hiki. Both Raikage and Kakuzu portrayed shocked looks at the unseen high level of Suetun since Senju Tobarama, and that was the reason the latter didn't even try to follow up with some attack, as his mind was racing at this new information. He knew he was outclassed. He might have been able to take on the Raikage with some luck, but he had to acknowledge this was a bit too much. But before he could plan for an escape, as he only had 2 hearts remaining, one being taken by the earlier Baijidama as he had to sacrifice one of the little creatures he had to escape, and the other 2 from the Raikage and the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. A sinister laugh was heard around them, before a figure emerged from the ground. Kakuku Naruto-kun, you sure have grown up. It seems following the sudden spike of chakra led to an interesting turn of events. Let's see if the reports from Danzo are actually real. Maybe have the brat as a bargain ship to get something from that idiotic man. Jolts of electricity started to dance around his blue eyes as he heard that voice, and his body seemed to tense slightly as anger started to build up hearing that familiar voice. Pedo team. There was a slight twitch on Orochimaru's eyebrow at the familiar nickname given by his former teammate, Jiraiya, before cackling in amusement, being able to attain and use that type of level of Suiton. He licked his lips before continuing. I'll be sure to experiment on that little body of yours. Though I doubt you're at Sasuke-kun's level, you'll never be. The Sannin expected to rile up the former Konoha's genin, as he knew how sore the subject of Sasuke was to the young Uzumaki, and that's why he had a surprised look when he just let out a full-blown laugh. Ha 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 ha, that's rich of you. I couldn't care less for your little boy's toy. Though, you're right in one thing. Orochimaru raised an eyebrow at that. Oh. And what's th? He wasn't able to finish as a fist was thrusted on his stomach, and his eyes widened as lightning covered that hand, and a second later he gritted his teeth at the high jolts of electricity sent throughout his body. I'm way out of his league, Raiken. He jumped backwards as soon as he noticed the person that he hit turned into mud before narrowed his eyes as the same person emerged from the ground. Raikage-sama, I'll take care of Orochimaru. The Raikage wasn't given any time to reply as the blonde man just seemed to disappear, leaving an afterimage that shimmered a second later and disappear, shocking the Kumo's leader who had now his own thoughts. His natural speed is so high that he's able to leave an afterimage. Not even I can do that without my right no Yoroi. Heh, and if the similarities are not just a coincidence, it seems I'll have another rival in terms of speed. Stopping his train of thoughts, his body exploded in sparks of electricity before vanishing from his spot towards a now two-hearted Kakuzu who had tried to escape in the middle of the talk. Few miles away, Naruto and Orochimaru were trading blows with each other, though they were just a blur. The latter was gritting his teeth in anger, as he was a damn Sannin, and he was being outclassed by a brat. Not even his Sasuke could match him, much less getting the upper hand. He decided to take it up a notch before departing from the Uzumaki and blurring through hand seals and breathing in huge gust of wind towards the Jinchuriki before spitting out of his mouth his prized katana, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, Futon de Tapa. Naruto watched in boredom, and without any hand seals and taking a deep breath, he released the same jutsu, canceling each other. His senses skyrocketed and he instantly ducked as a metal almost decapitated him, and using the momentum he slammed his hands on the ground, and a second later, the ground turned into a mud river that took Orochimaru by surprise, not expecting a fourth elemental affinity, sweeping him off his feet and carrying him down the stream. Doton Doria Taiga. He didn't even notice two sealless Kage Bunshins appear out of thin air as the clone and the original speeding through their own hand seals as an earth dragon-shaped head emerged from the mud, spitting several mud balls towards the Sannin, and the original releasing many compressed balls of wind. Doton, Doryuden/Futon, Rankuden. Flashbacks of his fight with Sarutobi flashed through his head as anger started to build up on him, and that was the reason he didn't dodge such combination. Orochimaru opened his mouth, spitting out a fresh and unscathed Orochimaru who now had a scowl on his face. Insolent brat, I'm going to enjoy experiment on you. And only then I can give you to Danzo. That pathetic man thought he could manipulate me, but I'll play along for now. That is Kukuku. The Sannin was about to call his sword, who was now stuck to the mud, but then a shocked look followed by narrowed eyes and anger was displayed on his face as he noticed one of the clones going through a single hand seal and placing a hand over the Kusanagi. Fuinjutsu, Shoryuken Kai. Several scribblings engraved itself on the katana before simply vanishing, and as soon as the several kanjis disappeared, the clone sealed the sword in one of his scrolls and giving it to the original, who now had a huge smirk on his face before addressing the raging man. So, you thought that the legendary Kusanagi no Tsurugi would just simply be yours after using a simple ownership seal? How pathetic. Orochimaru, not being able to restrain his anger, roared, "You fool. Forget what I said, I'm just going to RIP you to shreds, to hell with Danzo. I'm going to destroy you." Naruto raised an eyebrow at the statement, especially when he referred to Danzo as pieces of a big puzzle started to come together, but he had to put those thoughts for later as he saw the familiar hand seals. The blonde man immediately went through the same ones before both mans biting their thumbs and slamming their hands on the ground, both roaring in unison. Kuchios no Jutsu. Two huge plumes of smokes exploded in the area before two massive familiar animals stood in front of each other. Orochimaru, even though blinded with hatred, had to raise an eyebrow as he saw the toad in front of him. How can you summon the toads, you damn brat? You should not be able to after you got banished from Konoha. His response was in huge smoke that was blown out of the massive toad's mouth, who was the first to speak. Oh? Would you look at that, today I get to roast a snake, right Manda-chan? Though instead of Jiraiya it will be Naruto. Let's see how much the runt has grown. The large purple snake hissed at the insult before replying, "Team, I'm gonna eat you for what happened last time." Naruto, having enough about the little chit-chat, ordered his summon Bunta, "Give me oil." Gamma Bunta actually widened his eyes before his stomach bulged and a second later spit out a stream of oil towards the snake. Naruto grabbed a piece of paper and, using his chakra as a medium, he started to moving his index finger in random directions as a blue chakra kanji for fire engraved itself on the paper before it released a massive flamethrower which combined with the oil, igniting it and amplifying his power by many folds. Fuinjutsu, Hai no Bakuhatsu Katon, Gameya Enden. Orochimaru was eye-wide as he hasn't seen that type of fuinjutsu ever. He read about the legendary Uzumaki Mito who was able to do the same thing and much more, and it seems this brat attained the knowledge on how to do it. He didn't need to relay any orders to his summon, and proof of that was when Manda, using his agility and speed, escaped the wall of fire. Orochimaru jumped out of Manda's head, giving him a subtle nod, before going through a chain of hand seals, puffing his chest. The Sannin released a huge ball of fire towards Naruto. Katan, Gakakyu no Jutsu. Naruto had already pinpointed Orochimaru's chakra, and after puffing his cheeks, he breathed a stream of water which collided and nullified the ball of fire, creating a small amount of steam. Suetun, Mizurappa. The blonde Uzumaki and Gamabunta narrowed their eyes at the smirk on Orochimaru's face, and was at that moment that a thought of realization hit their heads. Shit, the damn snake. The ground shook itself, and not a second later Manda exploded from the ground behind Gamabunta, who was cursing himself from his stupidity. The snake had already lunged himself towards the toad with his jaws wide open. A purple liquid was visible dripping out of his mouth, and realization came upon them. Poison. Gamabunta had his eyes widened, and Naruto didn't waste any time, and without hesitation, he clapped his hands, intertwining his fingers, that made Orochimaru, who was watching in amusement at his certain victory, widen his eyes in shock at the familiar seal. Impossible! It can't be! And true to his fears, several thick branches emerged from the ground beneath the snake at tremendous speeds, which quickly encircled around his body before he could bite the toad. Mokutan, Shurten Togoku. Naruto didn't waste this opportunity, and rapidly placed his right hand on the hilt that was strapped on his waist before blurring in pure speed. Manda had a look of shock and fear as he saw the legendary Kekkai Genkai. He immediately tried to dispel himself back to his realm, but his eyes widened when he wasn't able to. A hit of realization came upon him as he gazed over the branches imprisoning him. Damn you, Orochimaru! That was his last thought as he watched in fascination the several black and blonde combined blurs all over his body. He idly noticed the black sword and the style the little runt was using, and had to appraise at how flawless he was dancing before he finally heard a click of a sword sheldering, and a second later the snake's body was, literally, dismembered. Mitsurajiryu, sure no Odori. Splash. Orochimaru widened his eyes in shock and actually fear as he heard the name. The brat murmured his technique. He had tried to acquire the knowledge of the legendary and lost arts of the Hiten Mitsurajiryu that the Shodai Uzukage was so famous for, but he couldn't even get a simple glimpse of said arts. And now this, he just stood there too, shocked as the same style destroyed his first and last personal summon. The last thought made his blood boil. Although he wasn't one for feelings, he had always appreciated having Manda as a backup, one that never has failed him, and now watching this brat killing him in cold blood made him downright furious. He couldn't even experiment on the snake's body to augment his knowledge of its poisons, as what was left of its body was now being destroyed by the same tree branches. He didn't even notice Gamabunta dispelling itself after giving some appraising words to his summoner before he finally addressed him. Anger visible sipped in his tone. Brat, mark my words, I'm gonna kill you. But first, I'll make you suffer, killing all your loved ones in front of you after they get raped from every single sound shinobi I have. I'll have my vengeance, remember that. As soon as I get Sasuke-kun's body, I'll come after you, you insolent piece of trash. Naruto held an impassive face as he heard the Sannin rant. He knew Orochimaru was a powerful foe, but he lost himself with petty ideas such as acquiring immortality, and never tried to surpass a certain level he had long reached. He wasn't on his prime, and even with all the experiments he did on himself, Naruto dared to say he was probably the weakest of the Densetsu no Sanins. He watched in amusement as the snake user's body turned into mud and disappeared out of sight and almost out of his amazing sensors before taking a deep breath and walking towards the location where another fight had took place and had already finished, and it seemed as if the Raikage had came out on top, and if his sensory abilities were right, and they always were, the Raikage didn't have too much trouble, though, judging from how Kakuzu's chakra was before he left to fight Orochimaru, he wasn't expecting less. Naruto knew now the implications of having Orochimaru have the knowledge of him possessing the legendary Mokutan, but the situation called for it. He wasn't going to let Gamabunta die. Although the currently Toad boss was Minato's personal summoner, the Toad had warmed up to his heart, and had always treated him nicely after he told him what happened after the banishment. He wasn't worried about letting the knowledge of having the Mokutan out, not in the slightest. But it's probably going to give him much unneeded attention, and he had to be even more aware now that he knew Orochimaru and Danzo apparently were working together, if what the Sannin said was any indicator. Kaminari no Kuni unknown, now destroyed, town. Raikage was standing beside Yugito, watching as the newly arrived team glomped on the Nibi's Jinchuriki. He was having other thoughts as his mind was still on the young man that had saved his surrogate daughter, and judging by the emotions running on her eyes, she too was in a turmoil. One red-haired kunoichi that was still crying in relief spoke. We need to go, Raikage-sama. Yugito-chan might have internal injuries. It was a busted blonde-haired that replied coolly, doubtful. Nibi has probably healed her. It was probably due to the strain on her chakra coils of having released the complete form of her biju, and using its ultimate technique when she's still inexperienced. Everyone tensed as they didn't even sense the person until he spoke a few meters behind them. The three chunins, a busty blonde-haired, a red-haired kunoichi and a white-haired man, draw their tantos and narrowed their gazes at the new intruder. But before anyone could take initiative, Yugito spoke in a rather urgent voice. Stop! He was the one who saved me. Everyone relaxed, albeit still aware of any attacks should the newcomer think about it. It was the Raikage who made himself known in his familiar gruff voice. Although I appreciate you saving Yugito-chan, I have to ask, what are you doing in Kaminari no Kuni? Without missing a beat, Naruto replied with an impassive face. I was actually heading towards Kumo. At this, everyone narrowed their eyes in suspicion. I'd been banished from my former village, Konoha no Sato, 3 years ago and decided to travel through the elemental nations before settling down. At this, everyone once again relaxed though. The Raikage hummed a bit for a few seconds and spoke. Alright, you can come with us. Though you have to understand that you'll be under watch of my ANBU during your stay. We'll talk later on about some important stuff and I might have an offer for you if you pass a certain test, that is. Yugito and the rest groaned, already knowing what type of test he was talking about. Naruto simply dumbly nodded his head before someone decided to speak her thoughts. You should ask the Raikage to let you watch him over instead of his ANBUs, so it will be less paperwork for him, as you're strong enough and able to protect yourself. Now, this was interesting. Yugito was surprised at the very rare valid argument that her partner just said instead of the usual perv. And then you can finally kidnap him, bring him over to your bed and ravish. Yugito didn't even answer, as she immediately cut her link with the damn perverted cat. She couldn't believe she had thought that finally Nibby had come to her senses, but it seems it will only be when hell freezes over. Needless to say, the whole travel back to Kumogakure, Yugito was fighting a massive blush that had spread on her face as somehow her perverted partner was able to send mental images about his blonde friend, ignoring the knowing looks her team and Raikage were giving her. Meanwhile, Root headquarters, Danzo Shimura was looking over a scroll that recently arrived from a certain snake. As he read through the contents, the only emotion visible on his face were the slight widen in his eyes before in an act of rage and using futon manipulation ripped the letter to shreds. Damn you QB brat, to think you would be able to somehow release the seal I implanted on so many years ago. TSH, I knew I should have imprinted a loyalty seal as well, but that damn toad sage had to stop me saying that the old useless monkey would have noticed it at some point. Now that damn blonde idiot awakened his Kekkei Genkai. I didn't even know it would be Mokutan. Such weapon cannot escape. The old warhawk tapped his chin in thought as his mind raced through several dark scenarios before letting out a evil smirk. Yes, maybe a Wagakure would be up to some pity vengeance. Those damn fools might be able to weaken him, and then I can retrieve him. I shall lay low for now. It's time to know where some of my shinobi's loyalties lies on. This should be a nice test. Kumogakure no Sato. An elder man was meditating on top of some random boulder. If he had his eyes opened, he would be rewarded by the amazing sight that was Kumogakure no Sato. Both civilians and shinobis doing their respective routines, children's playing around with their friends, basically. A view that would give him a good amount of peace. His presence reflected power, authority, and wisdom. Some would say that he was on par or maybe even surpassed his long time and now deceased friend Hiruzen Sarutobi if compared. His now long, slightly spiky white hair have almost reached his waist. You still could spot some red streaks on some random spots. There was a slight twitch on his eyebrow and slowly, but surely, opened his eyelids revealing a pair of warm purple eyes and, with a deep and gruff voice, he spoke out loud to no one in particular. Interesting. This chakra, Western Gates. 8 figures were seen walking through the gates. 2 giant kanjis for cloud embedded into the equal giant gates. The confirmation that they have indeed and finally arrived their village, or in Naruto's case, a foreign one. Though, he held an amusement expression after watching closely the antics of the group of friends and former team had with each other during the trip. During their way back to the village, they encountered the Raikage bodyguards who had introduced themselves as Darui and C, the latter scolding his leader for leaving them behind without any warnings. As they were now walking at a decent pace towards what Naruto assumed to be the Raikage tower, he suddenly stiffened as if he was being watched. But just as it came, it instantly vanished in a split of a second. Whoever tried to get a glimpse on me is good. I almost didn't notice. I'm impressed. Yugito, who was walking besides her savior, noticed his body language and promptly asked, Is everything alright, Naruto-san? The former Konoha's genin nodded and dismissed her worries with a warm smile that made her cheeks redden a bit, much to slight envy of C, who had and still have a crush on the Kumogakure's Jinchuriki, though he just put that on the back of his mind. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki momentarily shifted his head to the side as if looking to a certain spot in the faraway mountains, and unbeknown to him, on that split of a second, he had locked eyes with another man. In the mountains, the same elder man let out a small smile grace his features as he locked eyes with this interesting fellow. He had to praise this young man's sensory abilities that were probably almost on par with him, and that was saying something. Only her distant aunt had revealed this much talent. Mito Uzumaki, though, it seems he didn't have enough training if I was able to check him out of that split of a second. It was all I needed though. There's probably no one who could hope to match me when it comes to sensors after all. It seems there's another massive type of chakra flowing through him, but it looks like it's being restrained by something and I couldn't get a read on it. Interesting it seems, after almost 2 decades, I'll be able to finally meet a fellow Uzumaki. He cracked his neck, and finally standing up, popping a few bones here and there, a small breeze blew his dark red cloak that was enveloping his whole body, A kanji embedded on its back was the only thing visible before he vanished along with the winds that had picked up the pace. The same kanji read, Yuzu no Arakuru, Raging Vortex. Few hours later, Raikage training grounds. In the clearing, stood both a Yandame Raikage and Uzumaki Naruto, former Konoha's genin, now on the bingo book as an high ranked with over 30 million ryos as a bounty with specific orders for capture on site and brought back to Konoha. When he discovered he has been placed on the bingo book, Naruto, in a rare show of emotions nowadays, had raised his killing intent to the point where the whole village felt it. Even the Raikage who had revealed this information to him had sweat running down his forehead. But few seconds later and after several deep breaths he calmed down, and his brain started to working in overdrive at this new and unexpected development. To get someone on the bingo book, one needs to get the stamp directly from the Hokage, and that was the part he didn't understand. Why would Tsunade place him in the book with such high bounty just for capturing only? He knew him being the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki the stakes would be high, but something just didn't add up. Why would Tsunade do that? The tensions were high at the borders of Hai no Kuni, and if his toads were right, Konoha was on lockdown. No one apart from ninjas from that village could leave, and even then, they needed specific orders. This didn't go well on him as he couldn't even get in contact with the few people he cared about in there. But right now he couldn't dwell more on it as he faced one of his biggest challenges up until now, though none of them was going all out. Hidden in the shadows, a pair of purple eyes watched the battle in curiosity and expectation. From what he heard from the group that came with the Raikage and his fellow Uzumaki, this was some type of test whereas the Raikage would propose him something, and if he was correct, he needed to make his move fast if he wished to complete his and his late wife's dream. For now, he would watch. Hajime, the busted blonde woman, named Samui, gave the signal of start before vanishing from between both mans as they locked eyes with each other, analyzing and trying to explore any sign of weakness one another gave. Right and no Yoro, with a grunt, Raikage, who's known for having little patience, activated his armor where lightning exploded around his body and covering it, his speed, endurance, and strength multiplying by many folds before he planted his foot on the ground, and in the next second he was upon Naruto, his elbow surrounded by lightning ready to knock him out, as he roared, Erebo! Naruto, who has been shaping his body all over this years, was able to follow, and he had to give it to the Raikage. The man was fast. He could probably replicate his jutsu, but he would need a few pointers as it didn't sound easy to sustain such jutsu. He murmured something as he saw, upon him, everything seemed to slow down in that moment, and Naruto immediately ducked, getting eyes widen in surprise from the Raikage. Futon Kekai, Kaze Dai Kyatsu. His right hand shimmered as a layer invisible to the naked eye was formed around his hand before sending a devastating strike on the Raikage's stomach that sent him a few meters backwards. The latter gave him an appraising nod as he surely felt that. Futon Senpuken. Even if I'm not even close to my maximum speed, he dodged that like it was child's play. He was even able to penetrate my armor. So much talent. But more lightning exploded from the Raikage's body, sparks danced even more wildly around him, and just as he'd done before, he tried to get an hit in. Keyword tried, as for the next several seconds Naruto dodged and countered every single blow. The Raikage and everyone watching had their minds blown away as they were in the presence of a young man matching with ease the technique and the speed that their Raikage was so famous for. The figure hidden in the shadows narrowed his eyes at every detail, and every second the blonde-haired dodged and countered and had to whistle at what he was doing. He's not matching Raikage's speed, in fact he's making him. You're slowing me down, it was a statement, but that simple statement made Naruto smirk and reply. Yes, I put up a barrier around me whereas the atmosphere is extremely heavy. Anyone's body that comes in its field unconsciously feels the pressure and opens up a chain of reaction inside as they are not ready or used to it, making that person to slow down at the sudden change for that split of a second. And the best of it all, the Raikage raised his eyebrow as he was indeed impressed by the technique that overall was a good counter to his own, though he had his doubts that would be able to stop his full speed. I'm not affected by it. A look of shock passed through Raikage's facial expression as he heard those words right from behind him before he was sent flying from a wind-laced foot near his spine. The figure that was in front of him shimmered out of existence, revealing it to be an afterimage. I didn't explain that this jutsu requires a lot of concentration, and if there's just a simple slip, the pressure will disappear altogether, but they don't need to know that. Before Naruto could process his next move, his sensory abilities picked up the build-up on chakra, his body trembled a bit at the monstrous amount the person was giving off. He was almost matching a biju. Don't need to fear me, boy, I'm not killing you though, I'll be roughing you out a bit, so you can stop shaking like a chicken. Hearing those words, Naruto locked eyes with the unscathed form of Raikage. The shower of sparks dancing around his body was a sight to see, they looked like they could cut through anything. A smirk came over his features. I'm not shaking in fear but in excitement. In that second his cheeks bulged as he made an hand seal, before exhaling a massive cloud of dust from his mouth. This action actually made his opponent smirk. Futon, Tsunade, he's smart, he knows he can't match my speed so he's limiting my vision. Thanks to his even more augmented reflexes, the Raikage was able to shift his body as an arm infused with chakra was thrusted upon where he was. He noticed that his opponent overextended it, probably because of overconfidence. There's the opening. The bulky man immediately grabbed the arm and lifted it. In a millisecond he was behind Naruto, turning him upside down, and with a strength that many could only wish for, he slammed the whole body on the ground. A large spiderweb crack, and a huge cloud of dust and many sparks of electricity followed the impact, as he roared, "Raigabomu!" Naruto had his eyes widened in the whole process. He got overconfident that he would get an easy hit as he put up on a lot of chakra on that cloud of dust to blind the right-hand user, but it seems he underestimated the boost that comes with the right-hand no Yoroi. He braced for the impact as he called upon a chakra that he hasn't used since his training, as well as using his Doton chakra and making his skin slightly darker. Doton Doma, BOM. The Raikage had to win slightly at the corrosive chakra when he was still on the process of slamming the Jinchuriki on the ground, but he wasn't a Kage for nothing, and his training with his brother B helped to make his body adjust to that type of chakra before backflipping and waited for the results. The spectators had to hold their breaths at the deathly attack of their leader, Yugito, and even Samui had a worried look, but before the latter could announce the winner, a maniacal laugh was heard from the small crater as a bloodthirsty voice reached their ears that sent many shivers to their spines. "Interesting, I want more. Let's dance, Raikage." The dust vanished and everyone could see now a layer of red chakra enveloping the teenager, a second tail forming on his back. Naruto could feel the insane thirst for battles he has longed since the end of his training resurface. That was one of the aspects that he gained during his 3 years while training. He lived for battles where you knew that the opponent was superior or was able to at least match him. Naruto took a step forward before he completely vanished from the spot. He was already standing behind the Raikage, his arm raised. Time skip. It's been 2 weeks since Naruto and the Raikage fought, though no one really won as they had to stop, otherwise they would level the entire village. The former knew he still had space for improvement. He still remembered the elder toad, Fukasaku, informing him that his body was now developed enough to use one of their secret techniques. He felt giddy just thinking about the prospect to learn from a being with over 100 years of experience alone. Though, he couldn't dwell more on it as he arrived at a specific location, still in Kumogakure, at the mountains. He held an impassive face as he shifted his body and gazed over the meditated form of an older man that gave him some flashbacks of his Jiji, the Sandaime Hokage. Said old man opened his purple eyes, already sensing his soon-to-be pupil, waiting and hoping that he got the expected answer. Naruto didn't fail him as his icy blue eyes gave off a determination that the elder hasn't seen in many years. "I accept." Flashback. It's been 3 days since his battle with the Raikage. He was already full health, much to the annoyance of the latter as he remembered the grumbling about damn Jinchurikis and their regeneration, and he was now strolling around some mountains looking for a good place to train and develop some new techniques before the meeting with the Raikage, who said that he wished to speak with him about the proposition he spoke about before all this had started. As Naruto was walking, he suddenly halted and narrowed his eyes to some random tree and with the even tone that matched his impassive face, spoke, "Come on out, we are alone." There was a small breeze in front of him before, without any warnings, smoke, or sound. An elder man with long, spiky white hair with some red streaks appeared. Naruto could tell this man was strong, and the first thing he noticed was that although he was old, he portrayed this kind of wisdom that he only saw on one of his precious persons. The authority he executed was no laugh either. He could feel he would probably lose here mainly because of his experience in the field that paled in comparison to this man. Though, he got an odd feeling as he felt his chakra. It was kinda similar? "I see, you can even have a red of my chakra to that extent. I'm impressed." The older man spoke as if reading his thoughts, and that wasn't an easy thing as he had his famous poker face in place. Naruto pondered a bit as he detected no ill intent or negative emotions coming from the person in front of him. "So, what do you want and why your chakra feels so familiar?" The white-haired let out a chuckle before, with a warm tone, you could even detect the passion the voice held at the few next words that would change Naruto's entire world. "Oh, that's because our origins are the same." Naruto's breath hitched as realization hit him like a rock, and as he heard the man continuing just confirmed his thoughts. "Yes, I'm an Uzumaki like you. I'm Gensai Uzumaki, known as the Yuzu no Arakuru, son of Ashira Uzumaki, the Shodai Uzukage." In that instant, Naruto gathered some chakra on his wrist, and in a puff of smoke, a sword that made even the elder Uzumaki widened his eyes in shock, appeared, and the latter murmured, "Kaminoikuri." Followed that involuntarily statement, he let out a full grin not seen since his wife's death, and the next few words shocked Naruto to the very core as a voice full of determination matched his eyes that, literally, lit up on fire. Such was the hope that rejuvenated on his broken heart. "Help me on getting Uzushiogakure to stand up to all other nations once again. Let's make everyone remember why we were so feared and that they should have confirmed that we were really dead. Come with me and I'll pass everything I know to you won't regret. Think about it, I'll give you 2 weeks. Meet me at this place and I shall know your answer, my fellow Uzumaki." Time skip, still in the flashback. Been a few hours since the conversation with another one of his kin. It came as a shock to him to know there was another Uzumaki alive, and one that could tell him what really happened on the fateful night. He didn't know what to think. It was just so many things to take in a span of a few minutes, though. The offer was really good. If he accepted, he would have a place for his precious people that he vowed to protect. There were too many pros to not accept. Right now, the main problem was in front of him, Raikage's office. Naruto instantly noticed the familiar faces of Yugito, Samui, Omoi, Karui, C, Darui, and Killer Bee, who he befriended as soon as he entered the village, all standing besides the Raikage, who supported a serious look. As he settled himself in front of them, the latter started. Brat, you probably have already figured it out what I'm going to offer you, but as a Raikage I still need to make the official request. So, Uzumaki Naruto, do you accept joining Kumogakure as an active shinobi, swearing loyalty upon your new home, in case you accept, and protect it with all costs, even with your own life? There was many hopeful looks from the people who were present at the room, but they all got surprised and shocked when the young man in front of them bluntly said, "No, but what do you mean no? Do you want to live the rest of your life as a missing Anayan?" Everyone, including the Raikage, was surprised by this reaction, mainly because it came from Yugito, who saw red after the negative answer. Nevertheless, the yandame let out a chuckle, surprising even Naruto. "I guess that means you accepted the other offer." The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki narrowed his eyes slightly before it turned back to the impassive one as he hummed in thought before opening his mouth to speak. "Hi. That means he came to speak with you, but as I was saying before, Yugi-chan interrupted me." Yugito let out an huff in annoyance, though she was still listening and curious who was the man that stole his man. "My man? Ugh. Nibi is already influencing me. Oh ho ho, don't say that, kitten, that was all you. Though I'm impressed as you found quite a specimen. I would like to propose an alliance as soon as we establish ourselves in our new home. Gensai-sama told me that for the last decade he's been training with a few old friends, the new generation, in the village in secret. Unfortunately, there's no Uzumakis besides the two of us, but that doesn't mean that they don't possess an extraordinary potential. I guess he was just waiting for the right piece of the puzzle to announce the return of Uzushiogakure. Raikage, though, preferred muscles over brains. He wasn't dumb enough to the point where he would reject such offer. He heard many stories about the legendary village that was Uzushiogakure and her shinobis. They were in possession of a lot of rare minerals, and the fact that they had, literally, a sea around the village, not speaking of their barriers that wouldn't let some foreigner enter. There were a lot of pros. I guess you'll be the yandame Uzukage for you to propose such alliance with one of the 5 great nations, no less. Naruto thought over if he should tell him the truth or not, but since he could detect the emotions rolling of the man, he decided to not lie. "No. I'll be getting trained by Gensai-sama, who will be the yandame. I told him already I had no interest of being a kage. That dream was lost a long time ago. I'll probably be like his right-hand man and the ambassador in case this alliance goes forward." Raikage hummed in thought, a hand on his chin stroking his beard as his mind raced through the implications that this would bring. He had no illusions. As soon as the other villages get the knowledge of the famous Uzushiogakure's return, there will be a lot of blood and secrets that thought dead coming to the surface if the man named Gensai, who spoke to him about Naruto, told him the truth. He had seen the hatred still rolling on that man's eyes despite being an old man. He guessed it was because of the massacre that his family suffered. But there was a specific village that he held even more hatred than the others. Konoha. If the man told him the truth, then Konoha would be the talk in the town for many years. Or maybe there will be a bloodbath reminiscing the Clan Wars era, and with Uzumaki Naruto by his side, the Raikage seriously doubted the chances of the Leaf Village. But there was still many unknowns in the world. Like Kiri, Suna, the small country's Akatsuki. This will be fun. I've been hitching to put some tree huggers in their place. As the Raikage of Kumogakure no Sato, I accept your proposition, though we still need to have a meeting with the daimyo of Kaminari no Kuni. But I don't think there will be any problems. Naruto smiled for the first time since the meeting. Everyone there was shocked at the turn of events. Yugito calmed down as she heard the entire conversation and couldn't help to let out a smile as well at the prospect of seeing the man that captivated his heart soon enough. Maybe she could settle down in Uzushio. That would be interesting. Maybe when this all is over. I'm so proud of you, my little kitten. You should just get over with it and jump on him before he leaves the village, so you can get full of Nibi. Shut up. Time skip. 2 months. Konoha no Sato. It's been roughly 2 months since the rescue of the Kazekage. Things got out of hand. A group consisted of Yuhi Kurinai, Yuzuki Yugao, Hana Inuzuka, Saminuzuka, Shizen Kato, Midarashi Enko, Hataki Kakashi, and the Ichiraku family were worried. The village was on lockdown. Since the news of the whereabouts of Uzumaki Naruto had gotten out, both civilians and shinobis alike were tense. The placement of said person in their bingo book didn't help the matters. The power he had shown during what was their mission that would result, hopefully, on the improvement in the relationship between both Tsunade and Konohagakure was something that certainly left their minds boggling. It was something neither of them thought possible. The dead last. The dope of the new generation. The outcast. Of course, no one predicted that this person would be the future wielder of the famous Mokutan, something that their precious Shodai Hokage was so famous for, and that was not counting the prowess and the talent/potential without it. Everyone knew that he was now unreachable, at least not without a fight. Back to the group. They were shocked since the news of their, secretly, precious blonde-haired was placed in Konoha's bingo book, and his high bounty was something that left them really confused with their Hokage. No one knew what was happening with Tsunade. They couldn't forget the day Shizen called for an urgent meeting with the group. Apparently, Tsunade's mind snapped after so much pressure from the council, the elders and some clan heads, and with the topic of one Uzumaki Naruto returning, was the last straw. But some, mainly Hataki Kakashi, Shizen, the former being a very smart person and the latter for living with her master for many years, and unknowingly Nara Shikamaru and his father, knew something was wrong, very wrong. They knew something was up. Since the banish of Naruto, she overcame the demands and the progressive power abusing of the civilian council and started ruling Konoha with an iron fist. Even with the strained alliance with Suna, the many losses of alliances, no one could complain about the many hard decisions she made. They were proud of Senju Tsunade being their Kage, but suddenly, just after the reports from the Kazekage's mission had gotten out, everything turned upside down. Many ANBUs, Jounins and Chunins being sent to the borders, the decreasing year of the graduations, and finally the placement of Naruto in the bingo book. The group shared their opinion in the matter, and they finally came to the most probable reason, or, in this case, person, behind all of this: Jiraiya. As soon as Shizen recounted what happened between the Gamma Sennin and Naruto, they instantly knew he was the culprit or the man who was somehow plotting behind the scenes. But then, another person that Kakashi suggested, and some plainly agreed, came to the conversation: Danzo. It was no news, at least for the older generation, that this man was dark. His title as Shinobi no Yami was enough for that matter. They knew he wanted the Hokage's title since the Sendame's rule. He had tried many times to get Uzumaki Naruto under his thumb but never got his wishes. But the main question was, how? A person can't just change his personality so drastically. Mainly Senju Tsunade, a woman renowned for her independence in many topics. A woman who became the world's strongest kunoichi. How was she being manipulated? Shikamaru, who had the highest IQ from Hai no Kuni, couldn't decipher this puzzle, not without all the pieces, not without knowing the darkest secrets of Konoha, such as the Uchiha's massacre, or the man known as Shinobi no Yami. Meanwhile, the group knew they had to leave Konoha as soon as possible, but with all of this changes they couldn't. A village being on lockdown meant that they needed a direct and specific mission from the Hokage, otherwise they would be followed, instantly. They weren't about to underestimate the effectiveness of Jiraiya's spy network, and they didn't want to put Naruto in even more danger. Root headquarters. Danzo smiled. The reports he had received from his latest servant was something that made him let out a rare emotion. His troops were doing amazingly fine. No Konoha shinobis thought about to ask what really changed. He was aware that Shizen Kato, the apprentice of his new servant, was a flight risk that would, eventually, notice something wrong. He had to put an end to that. He wouldn't mess things up after coming so far. Fu, a shadow emerged from the corner and knelt in front of his commander Danzo, waiting for his orders. Take this scroll to our little puppet. After a short hi Danzo-sama, the figure vanished a second later to accomplish his mission. The root commander was about to start reviewing some other secret files but stopped and shifted his eyes to the corner of his office. What can I do for you, Jiraiya? A grunt of what he could figure as disappointment met his ears before one of the three Sannin jumped out of the shadows and lined up to a wall. His arms crossed over his chest as he met the gaze of his sensei's former teammate. Do you think it's wise to let them leave the village? Danzo didn't blink, though his eyes hardened a bit at the question. Don't assume I'm like my fool of teammate Hiruzen. I'll have 3 squads of my ANBU following them in the shadows. Here, his eyes darkened dramatically, and as soon as they complete the mission, they will be killed on the spot. Jiraiya hummed and thought at the implications. He still thought it was going to be a huge mistake letting this particular group leave the village. Someone like Hatake Kakashi shouldn't be underestimated, and his motto of a shinobi must see the underneath of underneath could cost them a lot. He didn't know how right he was. Also, his skills went up a notch. He remembered catching a glimpse of his training during the last few years and even left him, a Sannin, baffled. On top of that, Shizen, Kurenai and Hana were going to be part of his team. Even if Danzo had, somewhat, tried to perfectly balance that team with a ninjutsu, taijutsu/tracking, genjutsu and irionin specialists to avoid suspicions, he couldn't help but have this nasty feeling that something in this particular mission was about to go wrong, and somehow leave a bad taste in their mouth. The last few years for Jiraiya have been incredible hard until recently. His teammate, Tsunade, gave him such a beating that left him in coma for almost a month. He still has many marks all over his body as a proof. As soon as he woke up, Tsunade had him, unofficially and secretly, banished. If the other countries caught this type of information, they would have been, most likely, invaded. With his banishment, he dedicated himself to his spy network and provide important information to Danzo. He had tried to locate one Uzumaki Naruto, but never caught an hair of him during the almost 3 years. And of course last, but not least, his research. When he heard the news about his return, and the Kazekage's rescue, he fumed at the vast improvement of the blonde's skill. The brat even unlocked Mokutan. Neither Minato-kun nor Kushina came from the Senju clan, so how could that happen? And keep in mind that they think Mokutan is actually a Kekkai Genkai. There are no proofs that it is or that it isn't, but they just chalked it up to a bloodline that somehow skips 1 or 2 generations since Tsunade didn't unlock it. He had tried to reach Tsunagakure in time to bring his former part-time apprentice back to Konoha, but he hadn't been successful. The next was the confrontation between Naruto and Orochimaru. Rumors were that he gave the Hibi Sannin quite a beating, though, in his mind, he didn't believe any of that. He couldn't have surpassed the famous Sannin in 3 years, right? He was snapped out of his thoughts as he heard the person in front of him speaking. You'll follow them as a precaution and help my route on accomplishing their mission. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. He could probably take the 4 of them at once, even though he didn't know how much Kakashi had grown. But he wasn't a Sannin for nothing, even if he's already past his prime. Dealt with the first problem, Jiraiya hardened his gaze, a rare serious tone slipping out of his mouth. A problem has come up. There has been some rumors circulating around the elemental nations about Uzushiogakure. Danzo's eyes widened in shock at that, but Jiraiya's next words turned into fear. Somehow, they have rebuilt the entire village under everyone's nose. The elder tried to process the words, but his mind was practically blank. He wasn't expecting this. A creep smile emerged on his lips, after a few seconds, as he murmured, "Such a gold mine can't go to waste. I'll make some plans so they can, at least, be useful again." A week later, Uzushiogakure knows Sato borders. A tall, well-built young man, ice blue eyes and spiky, blonde hair with jaw-length bangs framing either side Ofi's handsome face, though the same face supported a murderous scowl. His fingers were twitching, while he ran at full speed on top of the violent ocean that surrounded his new home, wanting nothing more to grab the hilt of his legendary sword placed securely on his waist. The glimmering silver of Kusanagi note Tsurugi waiting to spill some blood. Gaara, his spy toad, had just reported him troubling news about a mission given, a week ago, to a certain group of people. At first, he was excited that the opportunity had finally arrived, as 3 of the supposed members that would join him in the long run were leaving the village, but then fear crept his spine as he heard that they were being followed by unknown ANBU and one Sanin, Jiraiya. His high intelligence immediately put 2 plus 2 together, and came to the real meaning for this mission. Shizen, a woman who rarely went out on missions, at least, without Tsunade, was a dead giveaway. He also knew that his former sensei, Kakashi, could probably come to the same conclusion, but he didn't know his motives or on what side he was on. Naruto had just been given the clearance that he could leave the village. His master and father figure, Uzumaki Gensai, the Yandere Musicage, didn't think twice and immediately let him go, knowing already what his pupil had planned during the last few years. Been almost a month and a half since he joined the elder Uzumaki and his ancestors' home. Naruto had trained relentlessly, and true to his origins, he developed his own style in the arts of Fuinjutsu, improved his kenjutsu, whereas he developed the art of maneuvering 2 swords at once, making use of the Kaminoikuri and Kusanagi at once. Though he grew leaps and bounds on futon manipulation, taking it into another level. Like Enten, that is the highest katon level one can achieve, futon has one as well, one that not even the Shodai Kazekage could properly control. Taiten, the typhoon release. A puff of smoke on top of his right shoulder broke Naruto out of his thoughts, though, if he was surprised, he didn't show. He didn't even acknowledge the toad's presence as he kept running towards Kawa no Kuni, the land of rivers. Naruto-sama, you need to hurry up. Kakashi is stalling off Jiraiya so Kurinai and the others could get away, but the ANBU caught up to them real fast and are currently fighting them. The sheer numbers of them will eventually be too much, and they will eventually exhaust themselves. The scowl darkened at the statement. His eyes started to produce lightning sparks at the amount of hatred rolling off inside of his body. No time to waste. A single natural lightning shoot out from the sky straight to his body, as Naruto clapped his hands, and as soon as it hit him, his whole body, mean cells, started to work in overdrive. Let it be said that a bolt of lightning contains 5 billion joules of energy, but Naruto, who completely mastered the lightning's nature, could turn it into like a Red Bull energy drink. His Uzumaki cells, which gave him a natural high physical and regeneration prowess, and the Biju sealed in him, helped in the matters. If it was a normal person, he would be, instantly, cremated. But he wasn't normal. Kaminari no Nagar thunder flow, and he vanished in a thunderclap, a few miles away. True to Jiraiya's fears, Kakashi had been worried since the mission had started. While following them, he heard him speaking to the members of the squad, Kurinai, Shizen and Hana multiple times, discreetly. He wasn't able to hear the conversation due to if he got any closer, Kakashi was bound to notice his presence by the smell or other means. It didn't take long for them to complete the mission, which was a proposition for an alliance with Kawa no Kuni. The daimyo had immediately refused it as soon as he read the first paragraphs of the scroll stamped by the Hokage. Such one-sided agreement was unconceived, and just as they left the small country, they were immediately surrounded by unknown ANBU, with blank masks. But Kakashi knew better, and it was at that moment that he knew the real meaning for this mission as he glanced over Shizen. They want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But now there's no doubt that Tsunade is somehow being manipulated. Just as he finished that stray of thoughts, another man, now known to the 4 of them, appeared, and that person made Kakashi curse as this just to another notch, and he knew that their chances of surviving were now minimal at best. With a plan effectively made in less than 5 seconds, he went with it. He would, at least, protect this team no matter what, knowing what they meant to his precious former student. 15 minutes later, it's said that shinobi battles are quick. Sometimes it doesn't take more than 5 minutes to finish one. But when ninjas of high caliber fight, it sometimes can go on the other way around. Just like the whole battlefield that was once a beautiful clearing, it changed. The ground, trees and even some random small buildings were completely destroyed or scorched to the very core. 2 battles happening with some distance between each other, but, nevertheless, not less destructive. An exhausted Kakashi was kneeling on the ground taking deep breaths, gazing over the cocky man, some meters away, in front of him. He, too, was bruised as blood covered some parts of his body and busted lips that made him grimace every time he tried to make some arrogant remarks. But he knew he had lost. The man was just better than him, as he could nullify the Sharingan from the many battles he had in the past. He watched as Jiraiya leapt in his direction, cracking the ground he stood in the process. A compressed ball of pure chakra materialized on his right hand. The white-haired geezer roared as he thrusted his arm forward. "It's over, Rasengan!" Kakashi's world seemed to slow down. He doubted it was his Sharingan's doing. Many faces flashed in his mind, but only a few made him almost shed a tear at the death's door. Raikiri! Boom! The sound of thousands birds chipping and the murmur technique broke him out of his reminiscing. A look of shock flashed on his eyes for a second, and a certain flashback almost made him chuckle if not for the situation. Before he was sent backwards from the clashing of both jutsus, Kakashi tilted his head upwards to see his long-lost student in all his glory, wearing his traditional black armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit, numerous plates constructing this armor, reminiscent of the clan's war era. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore 2 bands on each armor, white bandages wrapped around his ankles followed by black sandals. What made his eyes widen was the sword resting on his waist. He heard bits of rumors about the clash between Orochimaru and Naruto, but, even to him, sounded a bit far-fetched. The Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Naruto looked over his shoulder to see the broken form of his former teacher before returning his gaze to the man in front of him. Murderous ice blue eyes met black eyes, the latter having an emotion of disbelief crossing his face. "Sorry I'm late." Jiraiya, who quickly composed himself, smirked at the prospect of getting a bonus out of this mission. "You finally came out of hiding, brat. It's time to come back home." Naruto ignored Jiraiya, though, his eyes darkened a bit, before looking over his shoulder again. "Go help the rest. I'll take care of him." The commanding tone of his voice sent chills down their bodies. Kakashi only replied with a nod before vanishing towards his team's location. Naruto, who had his eyes on Jiraiya, again, pointed a single finger towards him. Lightning sparks materialized on the tip of his indicator. "Prepare yourself right on Byakurai." Zwap! A single lightning current shoot out of his fingertip. It missed Jiraiya's face for a few centimeters before it completely pierced 3 scorched threes behind the man who had his eyes widened in shock. "T2F fast. I didn't even see it, and the power it held would undoubtedly kill me. This time it will be different." Jiraiya's eyes would have popped out of shock as he heard the voice behind his ears, if not for a single overpowered kick on his back that sent him many meters forward. The Sannin used the momentum and flipped to balance his body to land correctly on the ground. He locked eyes with his pupil's son, trying to analyze what was happening. Pure speed, pure strength. What the hell? His chest bulged as he went through some hand seals before he let loose a massive stream of flames from his mouth. He had to gain some time to come up with a plan. This Naruto was different from the one he knew. This one wasn't brash or the loudmouth he came to know. He held the eyes of whom has seen death before his very eyes, the eyes of a true shinobi, the very same eyes of the only man he has always feared. Sensho no Hanzo. Katan Karyuden. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the technique. His mind instantly clicked on what this traitor was trying to do. But he wouldn't give none of that. Instead, he was grateful that he could finally try it in a real battle. His hands formed a single hand seal while inhaling a good amount of air. The massive accumulated amount of chakra was not missed by Jiraiya. Naruto opened his mouth, breathing a huge gust of wind. A tornado immediately took shape before it clashed with the stream of fire. A look of surprise and fear crossed Jiraiya's face as the tornado actually sent the fire stream backwards with the double amount of power, heat and speed. In contrast, Naruto was amused and marveled at the technique he developed. Taiten, Tsumuji Otoshi, Typhoon Release, Tornado Drop. Jiraiya immediately jumped out of the way, cursing his raging emotions. But the look of fear that wasn't lost on his face turned even more prominent as he saw Naruto moving his right hand towards him, and not a second later, the tornado followed the physical and untold command without any restraints. "He's controlling it?" The Sannin went through a few hand seals, pushing a bit more chakra than the necessary before slamming his palms on the ground. A tall and thick wall of earth emerged from the ground, right in front of him. There was a booming sound as the ruthless typhoon clashed against the wall. Jiraiya couldn't believe at the amount of chakra he wasted so the wall wouldn't collapse like it was nothing. Doton Doriahiki. He missed his enemy's smirk and the sound of clapping hands, fingers intertwined. Fool. Mokutan Yanagi. Wood release. Tree columns. Wood beams erupted from the ground, reaching high into the sky. Not a second later it sprouted and turned back down towards Jiraiya, who had his vision blocked by the wall. Jiraiya widened his eyes as he finally took notice of the 100 beams coming from his blind spot. He cursed himself as he realized his enemy's plan and for underestimating the brat who he had, up until now, see him as nothing but a nuisance and the loudmouth from the time they met. It's time to get serious. A clone materialized on his side, both already going through some hand seals. Their chests noticeable bulged as the wood came close to him. Kegebunshin no Jutsukatan and Mikurepo. Fire release, flame screen gale, and huge flaming tornado came out of their mouths. It clashed against the wood beams and it didn't take too much time before it burned everything on its way. The sheer heat of that technique was felt by Naruto, who stopped his own jutsu after seeing that was useless trying to overcome those flames. It seems someone has been creating new techniques as well, not bad. A grin, no, a maniacal grin was now splitting his face. His blood was starting to pump at the chance of a good battle as he saw, although with some surprise, Jiraiya's pose, his hands glowing and some features of his face already changing. "Oh? It seems he can still use that mode even after the summons break up the contract with him. Naruto could already feel the pressure in the atmosphere changing, foreign chakra sipping and flowing through Jiraiya's chakra coils. Red lines and toad features now more prominent and visible on his face. Brat, the playtime is over. I'll teach you a bit of humility, and just then I'll bring you back. Naruto couldn't hide his glee anymore. He made a single hand seal and with a grunt, an invisible force sent the dust and everything around him away. The pressure around the area was almost unbearable as Naruto's chakra spiked dramatically, and his muscles tensed. Kai! Seals all over his body blinked a few times, which didn't go unnoticed by Jiraiya, who had now his eyes narrowed, before it disappeared. He was wearing seals. And if what I saw was indeed correct, there was weight seals as well as chakra suppressions in the mist. His now enhanced sensory ability took a glimpse of Naruto's chakra and instantly his body shivered involuntarily at the amount he could feel. Nevertheless, he raised an eyebrow as 4 wood clones materialized out of the original body before vanishing towards a specific location. He could sense the 4 of them were standing in a square formation, and before he knew it, a large barrier erupted around them. The red color of it made him nod approvingly, as he was considered by many, in Konoha, a seal master, and even him wasn't able to use such high level of Kekai Fuinjutsu. Needless to say, he was astounded that Naruto was able not just for using Fuinjutsu but that he could use at such level with just clones. Shiiskyojin. He was broken out of his awe as he heard his opponent speak. Hope you can follow my steps. Jiraiya's eyes widened at the speed, his body shifted to the side almost involuntarily. His Senin Moto boosted his reaction and senses to the limit, but he was impressed nevertheless. He brought his arm up as Naruto thrust his fist on Jiraiya's direction, and the latter had to grunt at the strength behind it. But not a second later, his arms were a blur as he was forced on defensive as a series of punches and kicks tried to overcome his guard. Dynamiku Akushion. Jiraiya knew if he didn't break the rhythm of his actions, he would be overwhelmed. His pure strength was leaving his arms numb. As he avoided another fist, he stomped the ground with such force that it cracked all around him. It made Naruto lose his balance, giving Jiraiya the opportunity he was waiting for, as he needed Senjutsu and Katon chakra on his lungs, his mouth cavity already filled with oil. Jaimanwari. Earth splitter. Jiraiya let loose the oil and at the same time it ignited, creating a massive flame point-blank range at Naruto, who had his eyes widened for a second at the fast and well-executed techniques. Katon Daenden. Naruto didn't hesitate, and immediately brought his arms in front of him, his fingers a blur of movement as he literally painted many seals with the use of his chakra on thin air, in less than a second. Just as the huge flame was about to engulf him, chakra-like vapor covered the flames, although with some strain, but effectively making it disappear as a blue kanji. That red fire suppression glowed in front of Naruto's hands. Jiraiya had his eyes widened at the ability he only heard tales of, the special ability of Mito Uzumaki. Fukahoin. What? Jiraiya's face was one of disbelief. Never in a million years he thought he would see such ability. His pride as a seal master didn't believe he just saw this brat use it with such finesse, as if it was a walk in the park. Pathetic. Letting your guard down for even a second while dancing Fukahoin. Kai. The still glowing blue kanji let loose the flames it just sealed as Naruto formed a single hand seal, his cheeks bulging noticeably. Futon Kami Oroshur. Jiraiya, who was a few meters away after witnessing such prowess with Fuinjutsu, had his jaws on the ground. The sheer size of the flaming vortex, that would make even Madara proud, was something he wasn't expecting. Well, he wasn't expecting Naruto using his own jutsu against him. He never knew Fukahoin could be used like that, but he guessed it was because he needed a scroll and Naruto didn't. Senpo Jiraiya steeled his gaze. He went through many hand seals, needing a good chunk of his senjutsu chakra to his lunge before expelling a large amount of water from his mouth. It took shape of a dragon instantly as it roared to the skies before it lunged towards the vortex. Suetun, Seishu Goragon. Another booming sound as both techniques clashed against each other before a large amount of steam emerged from the clashing, engulfing the whole area inside the barrier in a thick mist. It's over. Naruto used the insane amount of molecules around the area to cloak himself. The water vapor bended the light around him, erasing his presence, even to his opponent's enhanced sensories. Mujin Meisai, vapor cloak. On the other side, Jiraiya narrowed his eyes at the sudden disappearance of the chakra signature. Maybe the brat had used this chance to escape, he mused to himself, but dismissed that thought in a second as he still could see bits of the red color that was the barrier still standing. He was broken out of his thoughts as multiple slashes, in an interval of a millisecond, met his body and then, pain. Kusanagi no Ken, Setsu Doku. The voice behind him and the murmured technique left his eyes widened in shock despite the pain that he was feeling. Shit, Kusanagi is filled with poison. And just as finished that train of thoughts, his body turned numb. Poison started to flow through the multiple cuts his body suffered in the previous technique. If it wasn't for his enhanced boost and durability that the sage move gave him, he would be undoubtedly dead. He took notice of the barrier dispersing itself as the mist followed. Not a second later, he gazed over the figure still maintaining a safe distance, in front of him. He smirked, as he wasn't a Sannin for nothing. He used his remaining strength, needing chakra on his right palm before slamming it on a scroll that he had borrowed from the toads. Even though it was a one-time use, he knew it was the right time. A plume of smoke engulfed his body to reappear at the location he had chosen in case he had to use it, not before snarling at the brat for giving him such a beating and humiliation. This is not over. Remember that Gyakukuchios. Jiraiya missed the smirk that came over Naruto's features. He didn't even thought for a second why he had missed the chance to finish him off and just chalked it up to him being cocky. But that was all well. Naruto knew that the former Gama Sennin had a few aces upon his sleeve, at least to escape. He was a renowned man for spying and escaping, so it was of no surprise that Naruto saw him use a scroll that he had immediately identified as a reversal technique from the seals visible to the naked eye. He had telepathic ordered one of the wood clones that was holding the barrier to turn itself into a seed and plant itself on Jiraiya. He would use this to make contact with the remaining people inside of the village. At first he had his mind focused on killing the nuisance that was Jiraiya, but then he remembered that he couldn't make direct contact with the persons he cared about that were still residing in Konoha. So, although he didn't hold back in beating the pervert, he still wanted for the Sannin to escape without any suspicions. His Soshinki, signal seeds, that was mainly used for tracking his enemies would be the key to get everyone out of that hellhole. His personal plan was finally starting. Naruto's sensors detected the group he had saved a few kilometers away. They had already finished their battle a few minutes ago. He knew that Kakashi, even if exhausted, would be too much for the squad that had followed them. He took a few deep breaths as his chakra started to replenish on his own before heading towards where he felt them resting. He had a faraway look while running. The letter has probably reached them by now. It's time for the wake-up call, and for the world to know Uzushio's return is not just some laughable rumor. Naruto didn't even notice the woefully quiet beast inside of him. Kyubi, who has been watching everything playing, could only sigh at the state of the world. He knew what was coming, and the battles ahead of his host wouldn't be any less dangerous where every single second mattered. The news of a rising village that had already his history written in the shinobi books for their fame and prowess over many shinobi arts was a dangerous topic for the high-class ninjas all over the world. There was no doubt that many people would try to explore and use it for their own goals and greed, not to say there was still Akatsuki lurking around. Their mission of gathering the bijus was something that bothered him greatly. There was only one goal and result he could think of if they were sealing all of his kin into one object, and that was something that even he, the Kyubi, feared if they succeeded. I guess it's time. Hagoromo GG, he's ready. And seriously, how the Kyubi, or for that matter the bijus, don't know the result of all of them being sealed into the Jubi's crust/statue whatever it is beyond me. Though there's many loopholes as the history goes on, we all love it the same at the end of the day, right? Kumogakure no Sato. Raikage's office. In the Raikage's office, the tall and muscled man gazed over the letter for what seems to be the 100th time, reading every detail of it. This was huge. He didn't know that they were already so far up ahead. He would have thought it would take a few years for this to happen. He had already discussed the topic of the letter with his now trusty council, and everyone had agreed to what was being proposed in the scroll. They had no doubts that if the old council hadn't been dealt with after the revelation of some secret information when Uzushiogakures destruction that even he didn't know about and the mission given to Yugito recently, there would be a pandemonium, but, at least, they were all in hell. The greedy bastards were easily on par with Konoha. The bulky man was very surprised when, at the time of Naruto's departure, Uzumaki Gensai had proposed him a partnership between Kumogakure and Uzushiogakure. He had asked the million Ryo's question, why? Although Gensai showed the hatred he felt towards all the great nations except for Suna, he had explained him that during the years he lived nearby Kumogakure that he started to lose the grudge he had against them. After discovering the council's plan behind the weak-willed but powerhouse knight named Raikage, he knew it was a matter of time before he let loose the pure hatred towards Kumo. During the many years after his disappearance he had watched from afar how Kumo grew up from a greedy village to a humble and respectful one. The Jinchuriki's treatment helped in the matter, albeit the Nibi's host was only after some time, and even then, some of the old generation hated her with passion. And now, the scroll he held in his hands, his answer, no, Kaminari no Kuni, and Kumogakure's answer would mark a very important and historic moment in the elemental nations. His eyes landed on the title as he read it again. Proposition for Alliance. Riboria Shanzahum, the Revolutionists. Whoever named it has a bad taste. Hihi, Haru no Kuni. A letter with the same content was being read by none other than Koiki Kazuhana. Her eyes were widened in disbelief as a hopeful look came over them as she read the name who signed the letter. Uzumaki Gensai, Yandere Musukage. But a single note under it left her paralyzed emotionally. No words came out of her mouth. P.S. The Haru no Kuni's hero has been dying to talk with a certain princess. After what seemed to be hours just standing there trying to process the words she just read, a blush crept on her face at the idea of finally being with the man that gave her hope again and helped her in getting her country back. Nami no Kuni. The sound of a bottle breaking on the floor could be heard inside a modest house. Footsteps of someone running towards the man who let the bottle fall could be heard, followed by a female concerned voice. Father! What happened? Her father, Tsunade, was pale as if he just saw a ghost. She took notice of the letter that was on the table, and immediately read it in a span of a minute. And just as she ended reading it, she too was left in shock, specifically at the notes written in the end. P.S. Nami's hero hopes to meet you again in the near future, as he's our ambassador. He said that he missed the drunk geezer, a beautiful woman, and wants to see how much the kid had grown over the years, whatever that meant. Needless to say, there was many curses about damn brats and a blushing mess that was Tsunami after reading the beautiful woman part. Though, there was one thing that both were thinking in common. He's back, the former, who had heard tales of Uzushiogakure from his father, and how Nami was protected by the same village when they were still standing, couldn't help but shed a tear as a particular memory, or more specifically, a dream of his father hit him. I hope one day that Uzushiogakure returns to his former glory. We were like brother and sister back then. It's really sad that a village full of energy got destroyed, but I know that one day they will be back. And it will be up to you to support them when the time comes. Make me proud, son. Dad, it's finally happening. Tsunade no Sato, Kazakage's office. Gaara had a small smile on his lips as he read the contents of the scroll. His brother and sister, Kankuro and Temari, were on his side reading it over his shoulder. Both with shocked and surprised looks, but not Gaara. Oh no, he knew this was coming. Well, not Uzushiogakure in particular. A surprising move that not even he could have guessed in a million years, now that he knew. Uzumaki Naruto, you never cease to amaze me. Temari, get me the faster bird messenger we have available at the moment. The monotone voice of her brother broke Temari out of her thoughts. She could only nod in agreement before she vanished from the office. Kankuro, who was still at Gaara's side, couldn't help but open his mouth to add his cent. Man, that kid has style. In the end of the letter, both of them read out loud the note written by Uzumaki Gensai. P.S. Hope with this alliance we can finally reunite the Nine with his longtime friend and kin, one, and his brother and sister again. Indeed, he has. 2 days later, Uzushiogakure no Sato. In the top of the Uzukage tower stood the same Uzukage, Uzumaki Gensai, gazing over his people. Everyone was standing proud and looking up to their Kage who had reunited them once again all those years ago. The fire in their hearts now burned brightly once again after it had been extinguished long time ago. The Uzukage had been waiting for his apprentice to arrive, but it seemed that he would miss the show. Naruto had told him to take the announcement even if he wasn't present, but as one of his chunin gave him the signal to start, in the corner of his purple eyes, on top of a building, there he stood, arms crossed over his chest with an impassive face, though you couldn't miss the small smile on his lips and the proud look that he was trying but failing to hide. Uzumaki Naruto. Behind him stood what he could now deduce: Hatake Kakashi, Yuhi Kurinai, Inuzuka Hana and Kato Shizen. It seems his mission was a success. He broke the eye's contact with Naruto, as he needed chakra into his lungs before a booming voice was heard all over the village. As of now, we Uzushiogakure, after so many hardships and sacrifices, is finally and officially back. Let's show the world why they should have confirmed that we were indeed dead. Let's give them hell. In unison, every single human that was present noticed the emotions running through the speech. Their blood pumped, and the adrenaline coursing through their veins made everyone shout as the power of those thousands of voices shook the entire village. The former Konohanins were left in shock at the scene in front of them, and neither of them missed Naruto's fist shaking in what they could tell, excitement. Uzushio, hooray! It was official. Uzushiogakure has returned. News of it has spread like wildfire. Not surprisingly, it took everyone by surprise, as none of the other nations' spy network had hinted for their possible return. Yes, there were rumors, but they seemed far-fetched, as the only proof was the sight of some movements between Nami no Kuni and Yuzu no Kuni, but that was all. Every single spy they had sent to retrieve some or any type of information eventually met a dead end, as no one was capable of overcome the wild whirlpools which, they noted, was way more aggressive. Konoha no Sato. Council chambers. Silence filled the room. Both civilian and shinobi sides were thinking about the confirmation of some inconceivable rumors they have been hearing for a while. They didn't think it was worth the trouble, as, by now, everyone knew about the fate of Uzushiogakure during the Dainiji Nikai Taisen, Second Shinobi World War. What many didn't know was that Konoha had a big hand, in their destruction. Tsunade, who portrayed a stoic face during Danzo's explanation, was the first to address the council. The civilian side were, by now, used to the new Tsunade, a veteran kunoichi, who, since long, had snapped and didn't care about anyone's opinion. Everything she said was an order, and whoever went against it was executed, plain and simple. The shinobi side, however, was a different matter. Each clan head had their own thoughts. Some saw it as the logical way to guide Konoha to a higher level, like Shibi Aburaim. Others could see underneath the underneath, and somehow, they knew their Kage was being manipulated by someone. Naro Shikaku and his son had many sleepless nights trying to solve this enigma, but it was just frustrating that they didn't have all the pieces on the board to solve it. But their suspicions were towards the shinobi no Yami. The fact that Tsunade had his root reinstated was the key factor to their suspicions. It's been almost 2 weeks since Kakashi, Kurinai, Hana and Shizen went on a mission and were yet to arrive. This was troubling, and Sum, who was known for her impatience, had a limit, but still, they had to give it to her for keeping a leveled head. Though Shikaku, more than Shikamaru, thought there was more into it. The Nara head had this feeling she was hiding something, but it was just too troublesome to ask. And so, I'm sending a team to travel to Uzushiogakure and open negotiations for an alliance with them. They were our cousins before their destruction, and I hope we can have our long-lost allies back and help each other in this time of need. Shikaka narrowed his eyes hearing this bit of information. He wasn't a fool. His mind had already put some pieces together, and knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Why, you ask? Because they didn't ask their so-called cousins to help them rebuild the village, which got him into thinking, why haven't they or whoever was leading their construction asked for Konoha's help in the matter? The Uzumakis were a bunch of goofballs. They have always put their family first, and their alliance, due to the marriage between Senju Hashirama and Uzumaki Mido, was something that they held in high regards. Maybe it was because Konoha had went against their own views and was now a shell of her former self. Or it could be because they were tight in financial terms following the loss of the majority of their allies just a month later after the banishment of. At that moment, Shikaka's eyes widened in shock. Naruto Uzumaki. The Uzumaki clan were insanely loyal to their respective village, but that immediately came into an halt when it came to their own family and ideology. One of their own being banished by their supposed allies or cousins would be practically treason or betrayal, and one thing that they didn't stand was being betrayed. One would want an Uzumaki as their ally, but if someone went against their views it would be catastrophic, and to add more fuel to the fire. They had banished the son of the heiress, their rightful heir. It didn't take long for Shikaka to put everything together. This wasn't a trip for a supposed alliance, this was a trap. Whoever was working behind the scenes wanted something from Uzushiogakure. Something they weren't able to get when they were allies. Something that Uzushio had probably refused to give. And when someone doesn't get what they want, I'll discuss with the elders what team will be traveling and negotiate with them. You're dismissed. Shikaka's body was frozen in place for a few seconds as the whole council barred the Hokage, and the elders stood up to leave the chambers. His mind went blank as realization hit him like a Nikuden Sensha, point-blank range, from his teammate, Akimichi Choza. In his subconscious, a Chibi Shikaka grunted checkmate. Konoha betrayed Uzushio. Odogekyo no Sato. Underground. Since the battle between him and the Kyuubi's brat, Orochimaru spent most of the time cursing the Jinchuriki for whatever he was worth. Curse you, blonde brat. It wasn't enough that Minato brat had everything I could only wish for, and now his stupid son is following his steps and more. Oh, here we go again. The Uzumaki brat had showed a level of potential he has never seen in his whole life. It dwarfed Sasuke's. Even if his little Uchiha had a good amount of raw talent due to his blood, it paled in comparison, though a part of him still believed Sasuke was stronger than Naruto. The only thing that irked him was the fact that Kabuto and the former Konoha's genin had heard his runts when he arrived in a condition similar to that when Hanzo had beat him and his teammates like a rag doll. It infuriated him, more so when the damn Uchiha had made cocky remarks saying that it was impossible for the so-called dobe to be that strong, that the Sannin was weaker than he thought, and that he would, eventually, go after the blonde to serve his life's purpose, give him the power that only was he worth of, the Mangekyo Sharingan. The fool didn't even acknowledge the fact that Naruto possessed the famous Mokutan Kekkei Genkai, and again, they think it's a bloodline, or that he acquired skills beyond belief in a span of 3 years, like his Suiton, Fuinjutsu, and if he was correct, a raw and unseen talent for the right affinity. Thinking a bit about Sasuke's training, he frowned. The fool was too arrogant for his own good, and the worst thing was that the Sannin didn't think he had the power to back it up. At the moment, Sasuke was only able to give him a decent challenge, and he wasn't even used to the new body he had transferred to. The news Kabuto brought him about Uzushiogakure was something he didn't expect it as well. He mused to himself about the possibility to acquire their knowledge on Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. That would be interesting. He could use those two to get inside, and if his hunch about the Kyuubi's brat whereabouts were right, maybe he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Kabuto, bring me the sound for Karen, Sasuke and Kimimaro. Another, and yes, Kimimaro is alive. I hope many of you like him because he will be someone that will have a role in this story. Why they killed him off so soon, in the canon, thus ending Kagaya's clan line. Orochimaru didn't even see if his right-hand man had acknowledged his order. His mind was already racing through plans to get some of the precious, dangerous and powerful Uzumaki's hiijutsus. Karen and Tayuya, unbeknownst to them, they had Uzumaki's blood running in their veins. Karen more than the Genjutsu specialist, but the latter's purpose, along with the rest of the Sound Four, was only to protect the medic redhead to access their vaults, though he wouldn't tell her why it had to be specifically her. Oh no, the Sannin didn't expect Karen, or the others to betray him, but it was better to be safe than sorry. The plan was simple but effective. They wouldn't be suspicious about the sudden appearance of 2 Uzumakis. Both girls would explain that they heard the recent news of their home being rebuilt to its full glory again, and that they didn't waste any time in coming back to their family. They wouldn't suspect a thing due to their family's foolish ideology. Being extremely good censor, Karen would be able to fool the praying eyes that would be watching them in the shadows, in case they suspected anything, and as soon as they lost them, she would reverse summon the rest of the Sound Four, Kimimaro and Sasuke. While they hide in the shadows, Tayuya would look out for their knowledge and any type of jutsus, while Karen would, hopefully, locate Naruto for Sasuke and Kimimaro to take him down and retrieve his body for experiment. Due to the village being recently formed, the Uzukage, who was yet to reveal himself, was most likely busy with all the paperwork that comes with ascension of any village. He, himself, had cursed those damned documents that seemed to randomly and somehow appear on his office located in the underground. Simple, but effective. Iwagakure no Sato, Tsuchikage's office. Ryotenbin no Anoki, sandamed Tsuchikage, was widely known for being a stubborn old man. That, and his Kekkei Toda, Jintun, and for hating Yandame Hokage with all his might. Though, he wasn't a man known for showing any, not even a slightest, amount of fear. That's why, at that moment, his granddaughter, Kurituchi, and his personal bodyguard, Akatsuki, were slightly apprehended seeing the rare show of emotions, specifically, the pale expression of their Kages. This can't be. Known for her impatience and cocky remarks, Kuratsuchi stomped the floor with her foot, gazing over the old fool. What's up, Aji-san? You finally snapping? Akatsuki was about to scold the Tsuchikage's granddaughter even if he too was curious about what could get the old man so riled up, though he had a vague idea. But before he could give her a warning, the Iwagakure's leader spoke. Everyone could detect the fear in his voice from miles away. We call for an emergency council meeting right this instant. I don't care what they're doing. If they aren't in our chambers in 30 minutes, I'll make all of them disappear in the next second. Go! Akatsuki immediately nodded as his body was reduced to dust the moment his leader finished relaying the orders. Kuratsuchi was about to make another reply, but the hard gaze her grandfather gave her stopped whatever she was going to say. It actually scared her seeing the old man like that. She just exited the room and would wait for an explanation later on. In the office, however, Anoki had his old mind racing through the significance of this news. It was a dangerous topic. He was sure that the small portion of the army that survived Uzushio's destruction reported no Uzumakis alive. Though later on, everyone heard about Uzumaki Kushina, who became a renowned kenjutsu and fuinjutsu user all over the world, arguably the strongest kunoichi to ever set a foot on the elemental nations. So, it could be possible that another Uzumaki had survived, but who? Someone who would be able to not just rebuild it, but succeed in keeping it in secret from everyone. This was troubling. The only possible way was to renovate the barriers all around the island to keep everyone away from trying to surpass the strong whirlpools and find the vault. During its destruction, no one was able to enter the supposed Uzukage Tower, and many villages had tried but failed bypass the seals when suddenly after some years, the whirlpools that surrounded the island became more wild, and by then, everyone thought that its former barriers or some type of failsafe just reactivated, thus they stopped trying to acquire their knowledge. But it seems it was the work from an Uzumaki who actually survived the invasion. And if that was indeed true, the man or woman who was leading the village probably held a massive grudge all over the nations. Though, it came as a surprise when he read reports about the alliance with Kumogakure, as they too participated in their demise, which doubled the amount of threat they were. Maybe that fool old warhawk could provide the code to break the seals again. What to do. Uzushiogakure no Sato. Random training grounds. Two figures were standing in the clearing, both analyzing one another. The boy on the left has spiky blonde hair, some red streaks were visible on it, two bangs framing either side of his face. He was wearing his traditional black armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit, numerous plates constructing this armor, reminiscent of the clan's war era. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore two bands on each armor. White bandages wrapped around his ankles followed by black sandals, Kusanagi safely secured on the right side of his waist. On his left side, a mask was firmly stuck there. He had an impassive face while looking towards the man in front of him. Said man has spiky silver hair, a mask covering everything from below his nose. He was wearing a dark red flak jacket, dark blue pants, and a long-sleeve shirt. Fingerless gloves with metal plates on the backhand. His high tie with the insignia of Uzushiogakure embedded on it, normally covering his left eye, was now tilted upwards, showing his implanted 3-toed Sharingan. He had a lazy expression on his face, though the younger boy could easily tell how his muscles were tense. Both were wearing a piece of fabric in common, though in different colors, a black armband on Kakashi's and dark red on Naruto's left bicep. Naruto's had a kanji that read Hydra, visible to the naked eye. The other had a kanji for Shugosha. The ranking system implemented by the current Uzukage, Uzumaki Gensai, he used the knowledge he had over mythological beings or sea monsters and named them accordingly. Akuma no Kajira, Devil Whale Unit, the group that specializes on trap making. The Explosion Corps, Kuraken Tanai, Kraken Unit, the Barrier Unit. This group is responsible for the safekeeping of their village. A person of this unit, through the many uses the barrier has, will check out whoever bypasses the seals protecting the island, from his intentions to his or her chakra, and then see if it matches with any of their villagers. This process is done unknowingly as soon as a person crosses any of the hidden seals all over the ocean surrounding Uzushio. Naraido Tanai, Sea Nymphs Unit, the Seduction Corps. Majin Tanai, Shark Unit, the Medical Corps. Sakura Tanai, Scylla Unit, the Assault Unit. Kayadena Hibi, Midgard Serpent Unit, the Tracker Unit. Yumabosa Tanai, Sea Priests Unit, Intelligence and Torture Corps. Yuzugo no Shugosha, 5 Whirlpool Guardians known to house the 5 strongest shinobis of the village that only answered to the Uzukage or their commander, and a few others. There was no Chunin or Jounin rank. As soon as a genin gets promoted, said person goes through a test to see which area he or she specializes. Inside those respective units, there are several other ranks ranging from novice to captain. Each person that gets to join a specific corps are given 1 year to adapt, train and learn from the seniors, and as soon as that year ends, she is tested on his/her specialization, and if failed, they will be demoted to the reserves. Said reserves will only be called in case a squad is missing a person. Meanwhile, that person will be given jobs such as guard the gates, patrolling inside the village, etc. With this system, the mortality rate was very low. It was easy to organize a squad in case of need. The fact that it requires a certain level of skill to pass the test after a year, it made everyone relieved that they could count on whoever they were to be partnered with. All of those factions answered to the Uzukage and to their commander, the Hydra. Whoever gets into Hydra position was or would be, to many, the strongest shinobi in the village. Some said that whoever gets to the Hydra position will most likely be the successor to the current Uzukage. Said person wears the distinctive dark red armband and a mask which had a design of multi-headed dragon-like beast. It was the blonde-haired who finally broke the silence that had extended for a few minutes. Though, the flat tone almost sent a shiver to Kakashi's spine. We didn't have much time to talk since I retrieved you all, and with everything going on it was literally impossible. Guess it was to be expected that you would join the 5 Guardians of Yuzu though. I'm surprised you actually accepted Gensai-sensei's offer to join the group since they are a very busy group. Kakashi gave his former student an eye smile. Honestly, even he was surprised with himself when he accepted the proposition without any hesitation, but after a while he shook it off to wanting to help his little cute student's future goals. He spoke his thoughts. I guess so. I've been training pretty hard myself during the last few years. But, here, the Niken summoner grabbed his precious orange book out of his kunai pouch as another eye smile appeared on his face. A few giggles instantly followed his next statement. Old habits die hard. Naruto's sweat dropped at the familiar antics. Though, the next second his gaze hardened and the way he said the next few words actually sent a few chills down Kakashi's spine this time. Hope you're ready for wasting my time all those years ago. Mokutan. Naruto clapped his hands in a praying-like motion. Kakashi was immediately put on guard as the pressure in the atmosphere became suddenly too heavy. He still couldn't believe that his sensei's son had improved this much in just few years. Gyukai-kuten! The ground beneath them trembled, and without any warnings thousands of massive tree trunks exploded from it. The sheer number and density of the trees made Kakashi's sweat drop. Isn't that a bit too much for a simple spar? Amigekyo no Sato. Tower. Konan is a woman that could easily read a person's emotions through their body language. She had mastered that art. At the moment, she was hearing the real leader of the Akatsuki reporting his findings. But it was the news of the return of Uzushiogakure that made the beautiful Aim no Tenshi narrow her eyes at the death body of her former teammate and friend, Yahiko. The orange-haired was slowly moving towards somewhere while hearing what Toby found, and as soon as the word Uzushiogakure left his mouth, his body froze. It wasn't a natural body's reaction, as all 6 paths bodies didn't show any type of emotions since they were already dead. It was the fact that the real body, Nagato, who was hiding at the top of the highest building in Aim, stopped giving any type of commands. It was only for a second, and he doubted the so-called Uchiha Madara saw it, since he had his eye somewhere else, but his blue-haired long-time friend noticed. They were snapped out of their thoughts as the founder of the Uchiha clan spoke. It's going to be a pain in the ass. I guess it's time to show up myself since Sasori died a few months ago. We are way behind the schedule. By this time we should already have the first 2 bijus sealed. We only succeeded in sealing the Ichibi. Send Deidara along with myself to capture Sanbai. Setsu reported that it's about to reform somewhere between Yuzu and Mizu no Kuni. It was Nagato's companion who immediately replied. What about Uzushio? Yuzu no Kuni is part of their territory. Don't worry about them. The other nations except Kumogakure will be making them busy enough for us to travel through their borders without worry. Pain was quiet the whole time while hearing the man plotting against Sanbai and the remaining bijus. Right now he had his mind on the newly reformed village. It was an expected reaction since he, too, was an Uzumaki. During the time Yahiko was alive, one of his dreams, he had vowed to himself, was to rebuild his ancestors' home, though that dream went downhill, or was basically forgotten when the accident where he killed his best friend happened. He had to think about this before making any rash decisions. Hi Madara. I'll give the instructions in the next Akatsuki's meeting. Madara looked over the orange-haired body for a few seconds before grunting Uchiha-like. With a joyful voice, he waved his hand to his comrades as the air around him distorted and slowly engulfed his body. Toby will see you next time. Bye-bye. Uzushiogakure no Sato. Training grounds. Inside of a newly formed forest you could hear metal clashing on metal. 2 blurs once again met on top of one of the thousands branches clashing their respective swords. Kakashi's was smaller but not less dangerous, the Hako Chikura 2. The white blur clashed against the black blur of the Kaminoikari. Denku Nagashi, lightning stream. Kakashi flinched as his body was engulfed in a stream of electricity unleashed from his opponent's Nodachi. He would be badly injured if it wasn't for his main affinity being right on. Naruto used his unoccupied left hand to deliver a palm thrust on his former sensei's chest that sent him flying back. He released a few breaths before gazing over the torn and bloody form of the White Fang's son. He immediately tensed as Kakashi's hand was engulfed in lightning before he launched it in the form of a hound. The Uzumaki member raised an eyebrow at the impressive speed and the cord of lightning that connected the hound to Kakashi's hand. Oh? It seems he's able to control it, so I can't dodge. Then, right on, Raijutsuga, lightning release. lightning beast tracking Fang. It howled to the skies as it got closer to Naruto, who by now had gathered a good chunk of his chakra into his left hand. A small whirlwind-like ball immediately took shape before he, too, lunged it forward in even higher speeds. Futon, Rasa and Kazemari, wind release, spiraling wind ball. The effects were instantaneous. As soon as the whirlwind ball met the lightning beast, it completely annihilated the hound before it kept going towards Kakashi, who had his Sharingan eye widened in shock. "I am possible, I can't dodge it." His Sharingan was spinning wildly, and soon started to take a shape into a new form or pattern. Kamui, Naruto's ice blue eyes widened in shock as the space/air around his technique distorted and soon sucked his jutsu to God knows where. He took notice of the new pattern of the former Konoha's Jounin. Just like during Gaara's rescue, so that's the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Truly frightening. Naruto noticed his former sensei breathing became very heavy and immediately came to the conclusion that since he had an Uchiha's blood running through him, it must take a huge toll on his reserves. He idly noticed the similarities of this technique over the one that called himself Uchiha Madara used. Maybe it was a technique that comes with the Mangekyo. Maybe he could ask some Uchiha. Naruto shook his head. There were no Uchihas alive. Well, no power-hungry Uchihas at least. The blonde-haired watched as Kakashi ate a chakra and blood pill and had to grimace as when their battle was over, his senior would probably resting for a whole week thanks to the secondary effects of eating those pills. Well, he deserves it. Tsunade no Sato, Kazekage's office. Gaara released a sigh of frustration. Since his rescue, the council has been nagging him over the alliance with Konoha. They were scared that two mans were able to penetrate their defenses and kidnap the Kazekage, and so, they were demanding for an alliance, at least, with one of the 5 great nations. They regretted the fact that they had strained the peace treaty they had signed after the Chunin exam's invasion because of a single boy, Uzumaki Naruto, and now, in their opinion, were paying the price. It was understandable, in Gaara's opinion, but the fact that they wanted the so-called almighty Konoha as an ally left him a bad taste in his mouth. After he refused and that there were other options such as the new Kirigakure or this new reformed Uzushiogakure, the problem with the latter was that it wasn't considered one of the 5. Many of the counselors started to think twice when they voted on the former Ichibi's Jinchuriki to be the Godain Kazekage. Needless to say, there was a division between those who wanted a new Kage, and the minority part that wanted to still serve under, and had their beliefs on the current Kazekage. Gaara and Temari, the latter being one of his bodyguards or assistants, were slightly anxious as they were still at young age and the idea of Tsunade, their home, turned into a bloodbath scenario shook them to the very core. What they didn't know was that that thought was about to turn into a reality as 2 figures, in the western part of Tsunade, gazed over their army. In the shadows stood a few squads with a blank mask with a kanji for it engraved on it. "It's time to get our beloved village, once again, on par with the other nations. We will not stand for being considered the weakest of the 5 anymore. We will make our ancestors proud, today." The figure, standing on side of the man who just made the motivational speech, gazed over the cheering crowd before locking eyes with the man once again. "Did someone write out that speech for you? No one takes you to be that kind of person, Baki-sensei." The now revealed Baki, Tsunade's Jounin, looked over the proud form of his student on his side before letting a small smirk grace his lips as he replied, "A ninja must see through deception, am I right, Kankuro?" The older brother of the current Kazekage crossed his arms while letting out a grunt as he turned his eyes, once again, to their army. I guess so. Back to Uzushiogakure no Sato. Your strength overall has improved, not bad. Kakashi I smiled at the appraise his now superior gave him before letting the unconsciousness claim him. Naruto huffed in boredom. He kinda expected for his former sensei to give him more of a challenge. He was actually surprised that he was able to keep going for that long before finally fainting because of chakra and physical exhaustion. Sending a clone to pick up the former Jounin and carry him to the hospital, he decided to take a trip around the village since he had nothing else to do. The teenager could never stop himself to be marveled every time his eyes landed on the eccentric buildings and the cheerful population of Uzushiogakure. It was many times better than the likes of Konoha for sure. While walking around the village, childs and teens to grown-ups to retired shinobis or civilians alike bowed to him. His armband around his left bicep stood proudly to the display of the population. Though you could see from the many eyes that landed on his figure that they weren't bowing for fear but awe, respect and mainly, proud that they were being protected by one of their own. Sometimes many children grew up a backbone and asked for an autograph, which Naruto gladly accepted while giving a few advices to the hopefuls to be shinobis. They expressed their gratitude and dreamed to, one day, be strong and cool like him. Naruto couldn't help himself but smile at the future prospects, and being their role model. He made sure to always warn them that the shinobi world wasn't a playground and that it was much darker than it seems, but, if they had anyone worthy to protect, they would be, undoubtedly, stronger and perhaps, one day, stronger than him. Although, even if the childs weren't able to read underneath that weird, in their opinion, concept or cryptic words, the adults all around them could only nod in approval and proud that this young man was so protective over their future generation. Naruto suddenly stopped in his tracks as a familiar voice he hasn't heard for a few days already spoke to him. "Naruto, it's time." He gave an hesitant unconscious nod before he vanished from the spot he was standing, towards Yuzuki's tower. Kirigakure no Sato, Mizuki's office. Mei Terumi, The new Godame Mizukage stood behind her desk reading the reports and the confirmation of some rumors going around for some time. She had read the documents only to the eye of the Mizukage about the destruction of Uzushiogakure. Needless to say, she was baffled at the stupidity of the Nidame Mizukage at that time, though. The part that consisted of her Kage's mind saw the real reason and the need behind the invasion. Kiri at that specific time didn't exactly have a good military power, compared to, for example, a Wagakure, and there were rumors that Uzushio would replace Kiri in the foods chain. The gorgeous auburn-haired let out an unladylike grunt. This could be catastrophic if the current leader of Uzushio knew everything about the invasion. He would probably hold a grudge over her village. Maybe she could send a scroll to ask for a meeting between them and resolve the matter without shedding any blood. She had had enough of it. The civil war ended recently, and the busted woman didn't plan to enter another war so soon. Ayo, call the fastest bird we have available if you would. The Byakugan's wielder, not that many knew, looked over his leader trying to decipher why would she need that. Though as soon as he saw a sickly smile grow on her features, he immediately vanished from the office before he could anger her, knowing already what would follow. Thanks to that, he totally missed the Mizuki's smirk. He's learning. Uzushiogakure knows Sato. Sacred location Kami no Umi, Divine Seas. Naruto sat in a cross-legged position in the white floor. Could he call it floor? All around him was basically, and literally white. It was like a void, but instead of black, it was white. It was a weird scenario for the Uzumaki member who stiffened slightly as he felt the sudden presence of his master. Gaki. Naruto's eyebrow twitched, getting a smile of amusement out of Gensai. This is a sacred place that our ancestors used to relax and have access to their inner spirits so they could be him. How would you say be one with them? Everyone has hatred within their hearts. What many don't know is that inner spirit is boosted with those negative emotions. And so, our ancestors created this place, with the help of thousands of seals, to have access, confront, and finally become complete. Naruto already knew that after reading the private user's library that only a few had access, but he felt that his sensei wanted to show how proud he was of their heritage. Since he had the Kyuubi sealed inside of him, his hatred, jealousy and few other negative emotions were transferred to the beast instead of his inner spirit. One could say that instead of having an inner spirit, he had an inner demon. As soon as his sensei stopped ranting about the awesomeness of the Uzumakis, and how they once sealed the whole ocean, how the hell did it come to that, he didn't know. He focused. His eyes closed as he started to inhale and exhale evenly. Mindscape. Over the years, Naruto had changed the scenario from the degrading sewer to a huge forest and an artificial sun washing over the clearing. Naruto opened his dark blue eyes, immediately locking onto the pair of slitted red eyes. He was about to speak, but the humongous fox in front of him cut him off. This is your final test. Hope you remember our deal. Fail, and I'll take over your body though. You don't need to worry as I'll fulfill your goals first before settling down. Pass, and you'll be able to use my chakra on a whole new level. The blonde-haired gazed over his companion since he was born for a few seconds. Stealing his resolve, he took a few steps forward before he finally came to a stop as a paper that had a kanji for seal embedded on it stood proudly attached to a stone wall. That same wall was basically to put a limitation to the space that Kyuubi could travel. He had tried to remove or shape it into something like a necklace, but that stupid thing had as its purpose to stop the demon in case it wanted to reach its host. For the first time, Naruto placed his hand over the seal and slowly started to remove said seal. It was only by halfway that suddenly a hand grabbed his wrist. The pressure forced him to let the paper go before he was thrusted backwards in a rude manner. The sound of footsteps approaching met his ears and he immediately locked eyes with the person that just stopped him from doing whatever he was about to do, wanting to pummel whoever the person was, to the ground. Blue eyes met dark blue eyes. The former had a scowl on his face, the latter's face soon, too, contorted into a murderous scowl. It seems I'll finally have the opportunity to set you on the right path. Dark blue eyes started to give off sparks of electricity as he heard those words coming out of the mouth of the person that once in the past was his idol. Naruto was about to give his own remark as his body was already trembling in rage, but was cut off. Yandame! A loud demonic voice shook the whole mindscape, though the blonde-haired adult didn't give it any attention, and a second later he blurred through many hand seals before slamming a hand on the ground. A large array of seals appeared visible to the naked eye. Intan, Kuchiyo's no jutsu, in release, summoning technique. Kyuubi halted in his rage moment as his eyes widened in shock at this new feeling that washed over him. It felt so familiar. It was just like, oh no, it can't be. A huge plume of smoke engulfed a good chunk of the clearing. Naruto was sent back from the sheer pressure of it before a loud roaring made him look upwards, and soon his eyes widened in shock and fear as in front of him stood Roar, dark burnt orange, almost brown-colored, 9 tails swirling dangerously on the back of a huge fox. Slitted red eyes looking down on the wide-eyed Naruto. A menacing grin came over its features as Namikaze Minato, that was on the top of Beast's head, spoke. After this is over, you'll be serving Konoha. Mindscape. After this is all over, you'll be serving Konoha. Those words kept replaying itself in his mind. You'll be serving Konoha. Serving it was a mere whisper, but everyone present was still able to hear it. Wisps of chakra started to leak out of his pores, circulating his form. His face was completely shadowed by his hair. Konoha? The blonde-haired lifted his head, as murderous icy blue eyes gazed over his father as thick purplish dark blue chakra exploded out of Naruto's body, The ground beneath him instantly cracked under its pressure. The temperature in the mindscape dropped several degrees under the volume of such power. Yondaime, even Incubi, were kinda put off at the amount of pressure on their shoulders. They could feel the amount of anger rolling off of the kid, and if the random sparks of electricity here and there that Naruto's body was giving off. He was pissed. As soon as the chakra receded, Naruto clapped his hands, moisture in the air and from the plants in the forest gathered almost immediately in front of him as a massive wave that surpassed the Kyuubi's in size materialized, before he thrust his arms forward. Suetun, Suejin Hanti, water release, water god's judgment. What the hell? Minato immediately grabbed one of his three-pronged kunai, and as he was about to go through the respective hand seals for his space-time barrier technique, his eyes widened as he took a closer look at the sheer volume of his son's jutsu. I can't teleport such widespread technique. He was broken out of his thoughts as the beasts beneath him swung 5 burnt orange tails and smashed them violently on the ground. With a loud boom, the ground split in two, making the wave destabilize itself and losing its proportion. Kyuubi showed some surprise on its slitted eyes as he felt some water still washing his feet before narrowing it at the Uzushio's commander. To think he was still able to change this area of the mindscape even after I succeeded in stopping his technique, truly remarkable. The beast watched in amusement as his summoner threw one of his special kunais towards the young man, before going through a few hand seals. Ninpo, kunai kage bunshin, the lone kunai immediately shimmered and turned into hundreds of the same object. Naruto raised an eyebrow after taking a few deep breaths to calm himself. He had studied the man in front of him, and that included, of course, what was coming next. Since his father didn't have the needed supplies for such technique to actual work effectively, he had instead covered it up by multiplying the kunai with a technique that branched from the kage bunshin. It was almost insulting, using a technique that he, himself, was a master of. Fool. Naruto took a deep breath, mixing a good chunk of chakra with the air that filled his lungs, before exhaling a turbulent gust of wind that covered the entire area in front of him, effectively sending the original kunai backwards and dispelling the copies. Futon Taifuika, wind release, supreme typhoon. Namikaze Minato hissed at the failed attempt. Of course his son had to know how to effectively counter his famous technique, the Hiraishin. Well, it wasn't his own creation since it was the Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tobirama, who created this specific Jukuken ninjutsu, but it was him that took it to another level. His mind was racing through several scenarios. He had basic knowledge about his son's skill set, not the entirety, as he was practically thrown out of his son's mind since the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki had archived the perfect balance within his mind and body, thus increasing the defense towards whoever tried to get a glimpse on his memories. Time to get serious. Kyuubi, destroy him. The commanding voice of Namikaze Minato irked the nine-tailed fox quite a bit, but he just went with the flow and ignored it, since it's been like 16 years since the last time he let himself loose. Splash! The sound of the three-pronged kunai hitting water reached everyone's ears before the Kyuubi let loose an insane roar that made the whole mindscape tremble under its power. Naruto used his chakra to balance himself on the water while narrowing his icy blue eyes at the sitting form of his father on top of the beast's head. Oh? He's getting serious. Glancing behind the beast, his eyes landed on the seal embedded on a stone platform. Many huge trees behind said stone were being used as a barrier that limited the yang half of the Kyuubi's space. Straining a little bit his eyes, he could make the form of worried slitted red eyes. Naruto's mind raced through several plans. Should I? It would be a welk shit, BOM. A massive claw literally destroyed where Naruto was standing not a second ago. If it wasn't for his fast reflexes, he would be the next Kyuubi's meal. The Uzukage's right-hand man couldn't dwell more on his predicament as blue and red chakra was being conjured right in front of the beast's mouth, and he didn't need to think twice as Naruto immediately clapped his hands, fingers intertwined, spiking his chakra to dangerous levels as his opponent lunged the Baijidama towards him. Mokutan, Kami no Te. Would release, God's hand. The ground rumbled for a second before branches upon branches emerged from the ground, which had already sucked the water dry, emerging together and soon taking shape of a colossal hand. Such thing was literally half of Kyuubi's size, but none of that mattered as the compressed ball of demonic chakra smashed against the huge hand made of wood. Kyuubi's red-slitted eyes widened in disbelief as the colossal hand closed itself into a fist as soon as the Baijidama touched it, and the only visible reaction was a slight hissing sound and some steam coming out of its sides. There was a smirk on Naruto's face that went unnoticed by both his opponents as a plan finally took place in his mind. With his hands still clapped, he grounded his teeth as several thick trendles of wood emerged from the ground surrounding his form. Mokutan, Kongo Shiboku, would release, adamantine forest call. This was a technique he created himself by reading about his mother's powerful Kekkei Genkai, Kongo Fusa. Although its purpose was way different from the Uzumaki's chains, instead it only gave him the usefulness of the Senpo, Wudama Raisengan. A loud voice made him snap his eyes upwards as a massive ball pure of chakra was heading his way. He sure is fast, but, crack. The trendle snapped to life as it seems to have its own mind, effectively blocking the almost instantaneous Raisengan, getting wide eyes from Minato, who couldn't believe his creation was blocked just like that, and how could he possess the Shodai's Mokutan dash? His senses skyrocketed seeing the small smirk displayed on his son's face before, and he immediately realized why. He was now basically surrounded by several thick wood trendles thanks to him being now so close. Receiving its master mental command, it sprung to life and lunged itself towards the blonde-haired adult, who immediately started to dodge left and right, his reflexes being massively boosted by the incomplete Sage mode, which was something that Naruto took notice of. So, he didn't finish Sage's training. Naruto turned his gaze towards Kyuubi, who had what appeared to be a scowl on its face. The fact that he was in the presence of someone that wielded a jutsu capable of taming him had immediately taken its effect. He had to kill the brat before things got ugly. With speed that someone from his size shouldn't have, he was upon a small form of Naruto, ignoring the trendles that were keeping Minato busy, his massive burnt orange claw ready to skew him alive. Naruto noticed a slight change on how the Kyuubi was looking him up, so he was immediately prepared when it lunged forward. His hands blurred through hand seals before slamming his hands on the ground. Daitun, Daisuhiki, Mud Release, Muddy Water Wall. Mud was something that he could easily create by attaining the mastery of both Doton and Suetun chakra. Its effects were instantaneous as a mud wall erupts from the ground, blocking, albeit with some difficulty, the claw. But that was not all. Daitun, Jibun Daika, Mud Release, Landslide. The mud wall reacted to Naruto's mental command as it increased in size before it washed over Kyuubi's entire form. His icy blue eyes could easily see the mud clinging to its target's body, making him smirk. Raitun, Jurakuchu Shirbari, Lightning Release, 16 Pillar Bind. Not stopping his combination, his hands blurred through a few hand seals at high speeds before 16 massive pillars emerged from the ground around the Nine Tails, which formed a giant oven-like structure, trapping the being while generating lightning, sending high electrical discharges all over its body, making its prisoner roar in pain. Now, for the final step, purplish chakra surrounded Naruto's fingers before he slammed them on the ground beneath him as several intricate kanjis materialized there. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Hano no Sakusiai, Uzumaki Ceiling, Flame Creation. The ground beneath the trapped Kyuubi glowed slightly before flames, literally, erupted from the ground, its heat reaching even the wood trendles still trying to capture Minato, shuddering from the discomfort of such hot temperatures. The oven-like structure cracked, showing the result of such combination made under 5 seconds. What was once the burnt orange body of the Kyuubi was now crystallized mud. Naruto sent a confident smirk towards the still visible and moving slitted red-eye before his form vanished in a blur of speed as electricity danced around his body. The lightning chakra stimulated Naruto's nervous system, enhancing his speed even more towards a certain location, which made Kyuubi's slitted eyes widen as he finally come into realization. He was already expecting me to react that way when he unleashed his Mokutan, thus leading me to his trap. Though, knowing he couldn't defeat me by normal means, he planned to capture me for a few seconds, giving him enough time to. The Kyuubi just now felt how well he was outplayed. To come with such a plan in the heat of a battle, he's not an ordinary human. His battle mind analytical process is off charts, but it's his quick thinking that makes him able to easily outsmart someone with way more experience than him in a battle. It wasn't just that. Kyuubi's brain was now putting every piece together about the man that the offspring of his summoner is or became. Clarity of thought. A clear sense of a higher purpose, which requires a refined knowledge and common sense. Accuracy of thought. The ability to avoid errors or distortions of thought to approach a target at a macro level. Precision of thought. The ability to hit a target reliably and consistently at a micro level. Consistency of thought. The ability to avoid cognitive dissonance, thus maintaining precision and accuracy of thought. Relevance of thought. The ability to determine priorities and remain grounded and pragmatic, seen by how Naruto had maintained his posture after his and Minato's appearance. Intention of thought. The ability to exercise emotional intelligence, by managing positive and negative emotions in order to remain objective, seen when he took deep breaths after his father's announcement that he would go back to serve Konoha. Ingenuity of thought. The ability to imagine the unimagined. Who would have thought to use such combination out of the blue? And to think that's not all of it, he has mastered his mind to such levels that what many would say about what he's trying to do being a huge gamble, or a suicidal idea, his brain instead has already cemented the idea and already thinking 10, 20 steps ahead. Truly remarkable, but a gigantic amount of demonic chakra was flared inside of Kyuubi, immediately alerting Minato, who, by now, was very annoyed by wasting so much time of his sage mode while just dodging and destroying his attacker. He locked his blue eyes with the slitted red, inwardly shocked by the substance trapping the beast for a certain amount of time. But then he narrowed his gaze towards the blonde's figure moving at such speeds that would rival his while in the Sennin Moto, his eyes locked with an object, whereas Naruto would intercept in about a second before his lips twitched into a smirk. Naruto was racing towards a certain stone platform. His form was a blur even to any experienced shinobi, almost a dash. A flash of yellow made his eyes widen in shock as a gigantic ball of pure chakra was coming from ahead of him, and with the amount of speed he was moving at he wouldn't be able to dodge. The impulse his body had was way too much, and because of the sheer size of that Rasengan, he couldn't possibly sidestep it. Shit, the kunai from earlier, I'm sorry Ka-chan. It's over. Senpo Naruto's eyes were wide as he saw in slow motion the compressed ball making his way towards him, The wood trundles were not fast enough as the core of that Mokutan jutsu was too far to reach him. Cho Urama Rasengan. Boom! Tsunade no Sato. Gaara and Temari stood on top of one of the walls of Tsunade. Two pairs of emotionless eyes gazing over the massacre that just occurred for the last 30 minutes. Blood dripped from their ragged clothes, though it was not from them. After what looked like eternity, the latter spoke to T-Think Kankuro of all people and Baki-sensei. It was a silent massacre nicely planned. Gaara, being an insomniac since he can remember, had a nagging feeling that crept to his spine every time he turned his eyes towards his village as the night winds chilled the hot temperatures in Suna. So he had decided to stay at the rooftop from the Kage's building, watching the moon as he did so many times since he became the Kazekage. But that had soon been interrupted by blank face masks ANBU that he knew all too well. Needless to say, he didn't hesitate to kill them all after they tried to threaten him to go with them or else. It didn't take long for Gaara to put 2 plus 2 together and finally come into a decision. Already knowing about some villagers' disagreement towards some of his calls when it came to their village, and now the fact that they're being helped by a secret ANBU organization that origins lies within the leaf had made it all too easier. He had to leave this place. It was only after getting his sister, Temari, who, just like him, had that nasty feeling in her gut, that they left towards one of the secret exits known only to the Kazekage and Jounin commander. The moment they placed their eyes on the village, it was the moment that they knew that Tsunade wasn't their home anymore. 70% of the shinobi forces were against them. The same army being led by none other than Baki and their so-called brother, Kankuro. They didn't have a single clue as to what happened with Kankuro. Why was he siding with the enemies when siblings should stick together no matter what? But it seems as everything was a lie. They would find out why another time. In due time, Temari, in due time. Let's go. The blonde woman gave his brother a side glance and Gaara could feel the questioning look he was getting while his eyes remained at their former village the whole time, as if trying to uncover many questions that were giving him a big-ass headache. It's time to visit an old friend. Mizu no Kuni. 2 figures were lazily walking on a specific road that would eventually lead to a temple which rumors had indicated of a large beast residing there. But these two knew better. The red clouds embedded on their black cloaks, unknown to most of the group's members, symbolized the rain of blood that fell in Amigakure, their leader's hideout and base of operations. The same cloaks protected them from the chilly winds as a certain amount of mist was gradually getting stronger. Any Deidara-senpai, do you think the Sanbai is really there? The now revealed Deidara grunted at the loud and childish voice of his partner. While he was already used to his antics, his mind couldn't help but think if this was how his fellow and now deceased artist, in his own right, felt for him. The former Iwagakure Chunin, taking a page out of his deceased partner, just grunted and acknowledged, totally missing the slight stiffening from his masked partner. The latter narrowed his single Sharingan eye backwards towards what seemed like nothing since they just came from there, but he knew better. They already know this might complicate things. Meanwhile, Kurakan's headquarters. They were in unit proud of their accomplishments. After all, it was thanks to their barriers that they maintained hidden for so long. It was them that sent anyone who got too close to their comfort that was misled out of Uzushio's directions. They were the Hyugas from Uzushiogakure, as they had eyes everywhere. Proof of that was when, for the 50th time, since they publicly revealed themselves to the world, someone breached one of the barriers. Tora Taicho, 2 persons trespassed the barrier number 14, between Yuzu and Mizu no Kuni. I was unable to identify their chakra in time. It seems whoever is there was aware of the barriers to nullify many of its functions. The only information I got was that they were both males and possess a huge amount of chakra. The referred man that had his face covered by a bird mask hummed and thought as a captain he was made known about some secrets by the Uzukage himself that informed every single captain of their respective units, so they could immediately and rationally come into a conclusion. 2 mans, huge amount of chakra. Our 14th barrier is set nearby an area surrounded by mist, and thanks to the latter, it made even more difficult to detect our barriers also. That specific location, there's too much coincidences to just let it go. It must be them. Looking over his unit all around several intricate array of seals while holding a hand seal, he addressed them. I'll notify Uzukage-sama. Report if there's any updates. Just as he was about to shunshin, another man in the room stiffened, getting narrowed eyes from the captain. What now? 3th barrier breach. 2 girls are getting closer to one of the secret passageway. This chakra Uzumaki, eyes widened in shock for a split of a second before he took some deep breaths, analyzing this new development the best way he could. A diversion? Is it a coincidence that we are getting 2 breaches literally at the same time? Even if the barriers are way too far from each other, still one's chakra is giving off a weird and nasty feeling. It seems somehow locked though. Kurakan's unit captain didn't think twice and immediately vanished from the headquarters to inform the Uzukage. 2 massive chakras heading towards Sanbai's former territory, at least from what the ancient books spoke of, and now another 2 unknown girls with Uzumaki blood running through their veins. Troublesome. Time skip. West Whirlpool passageway. After being informed of the situation at end, Gensai stood with his arms over his chest awaiting the arrival of what he could already sense 2 lost Uzumakis. Though he was blending in the water, as he had decided to approach with caution. A 4-man squad containing a member of Kaidana, Yumibozu and Sakura led by the Kurakan's unit captain to confirm the identities, tracker, intelligence and torture, assault and barrier core, respectively, stood in front of the hidden passage that would lead them to Uzushio, waiting for the imminent meeting. Two silhouettes finally came into view, but Gensai's eyes narrowed at the slight shifting on one of the redhead's pair of eyes locking with his for a millisecond. A sensor and quite adept too, she might even have unlocked Kagure's Shingon already. His eyes shifted to her other companion, getting a feel of her chakra, but the other one, that chakra, that brat Orochimaru. To think he had a full-blooded and half-blooded Uzumakis in his ranks. Gensai wasn't said to have an analytical mind on pair with Hiruzen Sarutobi for nothing. Pieces immediately started to come together in his mind before he finally sighed and vanished from his spot, whereas he appeared a second later in front of the ANBU squad, a few meters away from the duo, his cloak flapping with the chilly winds that surrounded the west side of the usually strong whirlpools, the water beneath them bending to their will and tamed for the time being. State your purpose, fellow Uzumakis. The strong, commanding voice snapped Karen and Tayuya out of their thoughts, as the former was still trying to get that glimpse of this old man's chakra. She had felt it while they were getting close, but as soon as she had tried to go further, it was like she got thrown out. We heard the rumors of Uzushio's rebuilding and we immediately decided to look into it while betraying Orochimaru. The ANBU squad was on edge as soon as that man's name came out, but Gensai had remained calm while gazing over his kin's eyes. I see. His eyes hardened for a second. Karen and Tayuya tensed, but soon the same pressure that came from that veteran gaze vanished as the old man's eyes softened a bit, finally addressing them. Come.